Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the even. Hold on, I can hear myself.
That's my fault.
What have you just done?
Twitch had not unmuted itself. Stupid thing.
Thanks, Matt. I was like, which button have I pushed wrong? Although there might be an echo. Hold on, let's turn off this one. There we go. Right, that should all sound correct now. Smooth start to the stream, as always. Excellent.
Slick.
So yeah, happy Christmas to everybody that celebrated. Hope you all had a great day. Happy Christmas to you as well, Matt, because obviously we haven't really spoken much since we've been off. Did you have a nice day?
I did. It's been an interesting break, but I'm almost back to normal again now. So, but yes.
Almost back to normal.
Yeah, I'll apologise in advance for the coughing and try and keep it to a minimum.
I think we can forgive that. Now, welcome to the penultimate stream of the year, because I believe you're streaming tomorrow, aren't you?
I'm playing the game tomorrow.
Yeah, and tonight is a bit of a big one. So traditionally, we try to cover as many questions as we can that the community have put to us, and give some answers to anything you still want further information about since the start of the year. Now, first off, full disclosure, I will say that we are going to attempt to answer every single question that was put to us on the forums. A lot of the questions that perhaps come in the chat, because obviously you guys that are watching live, you'll have questions as well. But they're not necessarily going to all be the wonderful kind of answers you'd like. So that doesn't mean to say that we're going to turn around and go, if it's not on the roadmap, then we don't have any information for you. It just means that we will try to answer every question as honestly as we can, but that doesn't mean you're going to like the answer we have to give. Isn't that right, Matt?
I think that's fair. I mean, I'm sure we will be slamming out the ticking a lot of the if it's not on the roadmap.
Yes, I'm sure we will.
But no, we're going to try and give as many answers as we can about where things are at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I say we just dive into it. We don't have an exact time frame for how long this stream is going to last. It's going to be until we run out of questions, I think.
Some point tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, so that's some point tomorrow, right? Yeah. All right, let's dive into it. So we've categorized the questions for ourselves to make it a bit easier. So you will find that we're covering certain types of questions, and some of them might repeat. So if we answer a question that's already we've given you an answer to, we'll obviously say that we've already answered it. How do you submit a question? It is currently, there's no point really submitting it on the forums. So if you do have a question for us while you're watching, just pop it in the chat and we'll try to answer it if we can. If we do miss your question, ask it more than once. Please don't spam it. But if we miss it, it's just because the chat moves quite quickly. Now, right, let's go into our overall quality. Matt, we're gonna go dive right in here. It's a bit of a big one. So, when are we going to see movement on fixing the game instead of making it worse?
Well, we're always trying to fix the game and improve some of the things that have been going wrong. But we've been doing a less than stellar job at not introducing new issues.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like every new release comes with something fairly fundamental wrong with it.
Yeah.
Which is very disappointing, and from your perspective and from our perspective, and it's something that we definitely need to get a handle on, and it's high on my list to get a handle on when we get back in the new year.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware that let's use the rush hour routes for example. They came with a lot of their own problems, and the community have expressed sentiment, that they would rather have the game working reliably. They would rather have it be more, they would rather have it work reliably instead of having all of these nice new upgrades. And it's sort of, are we overstretching ourselves at the detriment of the performance?
What I think we're doing is we're not finding the issues properly, and or not finding them in time, and not getting them, getting on top of them, which means that they're starting to get on top of us.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily about new features or anything like that. I don't think that's the issue at all. I think because there's all separate teams that work on that stuff, but there's some processes that aren't working, quite as well. This is the first time I've spoken in about a week.
You've forgotten how to use English.
So everyone will have to just bear with me as I learn to speak again. So finding, fixing, prioritizing, getting the issues sorted is something that's we've done a job on. Well, we need to do a better job on. FD1003 actually mentioned the speedboard saying 0. I have no idea how that got out. Honestly,
I think that was actually asked.
Me away. It's asked later on in here. But it's another good example of what got missed there. And it's on my list to have a look at. I've been basically while I've been off over the break, I've been sitting there and I've been making notes about what's the problem, what's actually what's been going right, what's been going wrong, what do we need to do, who do we need to talk to, and that specific issue along with the red light issue is just like, okay, how should that have been prevented? Because that's ridiculous. That shouldn't have gone out like that. That's just I know why the 0 speed limit issue happened. It's because there's an internal function which returns the speed limit, and to support the high speed limits, because there's an additional set of speed limits on the new German route that I can't remember the name of. Chemnitz, just in Chemnitz, but to support the tilting speeds. So the function was updated to support these things, so we could have additional ancillary speed limits on the route. While it supposedly, according to the documentation, should have been a safe change, the way that it was done, turns out it wasn't. And it started to cause all sorts of problems, but that doesn't excuse why it wasn't found. It's for changes. So this is where we need to be improving at a fairly fundamental level. What's going on with with that element of quality? There's just something not working there at the moment, and I need to dig into why that is.
So that falls quite nicely into a follow-up question, which is, will we prioritize fixing the game instead of releasing new DLC with crashes and bugs? So obviously you've mentioned that you're planning on addressing these and making sure that these problems get found sooner and they get addressed quicker. Is it a priority for you?
Oh, I mean, it's an absolute priority that the game is robust, reliable, and that when you play the game, you go into it knowing you're going to have a good time. Not going, I wonder when it's going to break. That's just really terrible. So, it's difficult to say, can you prioritize one versus the other? Because, well, kind of different people doing different things. But process of releasing new DLC is a process that works. The process for finding and identifying these issues apparently is a process that's not working quite so well. So from my perspective, there is a priority to fix that. So that new DLC doesn't come out with issues. Fixes don't create new issues. I don't know, anybody who's into any kind of development has heard the variation of the 99 bottles on the wall, where it's 99 bugs in the code. I fixed one bug, 127 bugs in the code, and that's it's a meme for a reason, and it just means you need to be really, really careful at doing that, and it's something that just needs to be improved.
We were asked, why don't we fix easy things such as the signal errors? So obviously they have now been fixed. The red signals, that they should have been fixed across the board, right?
Yes, the red signal error is fixed, I believe. I don't remember if has that gone out yet.
Yes, it should have gone out last Tuesday, I believe.
Oh, that was in the update, that big final update that went out. Good. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to say these things are easy. The red signal fix was not easy at all. But it should never have gone out broken in the first place. So,
no, the thing with the red signals as well, I believe it started off as a couple of red signals here and there, and then it progressed into being something much worse, where it was affecting almost every single route. Is this, let's say, for example, something like that was happening and it was only impacting one route, is it still considered a high enough priority for you and the team to look at it, or do you spend the resources on fixing it when it's severely impacting everything?
I mean, it depends how much it's impacting. I mean, if it's making a route unplayable, then it needs to be prioritized. If it's making all the routes unplayable, then that trumps everything. So in this instance, the red light thing. Now, one of the reasons the red light thing kind of snuck up is because there are cases where you can get red lights normally, because the dispatcher is a fully automatic dispatcher and it's not quite as intelligent as ideally it would like to be, as as a real person would be. You can get it into situations, not too often, but you can get it into situations where trains are in deadlocks. And so that kind of thing has happened and can happen. But then what we saw was that sort of the number of people experiencing problems with these red lights was sort of at its level, and then suddenly it shot up. And suddenly, hang on, lots of people are having red lights on lots of different routes. It's okay, this is a different issue. And I mean, full credit to the engineering team. They jumped on it and on the speed limit issue immediately, and started working on the resolution. I think the speed limit issue, I think both issues, they had resolutions into beta team within 24 hours. But because of the nature of it, this is a change to the AI, which the reason it went wrong in the first place is because I've got a lem sip here. Sorry, it's I am nursing a hot drink as a cousin. But the reason that it went wrong in the first place is because a change to the core code, in this case to the way that AI trains stop at red lights. What was happening previously was that on some people's systems, and quite a few people's systems, they were seeing random spads. And that's because the train would rock up and it would stop to the millimeter where the red light marker was on the track. It would stop exactly on that mark, and if it went 1/1000th of a bit over it, then that would cause the spad thing. And what happened there was that if there was any kind of a frame skip or anything really unfortunate happened at just the wrong moment, it would miss that mark, and then it would, even just by a tiny bit, and that would be classed as an AI train spadding. So what happened was that the AI trains were re-updated so that they would stop a little bit ahead of the red light. Which seemed like a sensible thing to do, but then the impact, or the potential impact of that, wasn't fully appreciated. And what that meant then was that some of these trains were no longer getting to their stop marks, and that's where they would stop dead completely. And at that point, nothing works, and you get red lights everywhere.
Now, this was this particular problem. This also fell into the care of the preservation crew as well. They assisted with the fix on this one, didn't they?
The preservation crew have been really helpful in a lot of different things. They're really good because they've got a good understanding of the game and a broad range of areas of the game now. The preservation crew are really good at helping support individual issues and hitting with a broad understanding of everything that's going on, all the different deals that's been released, particularly with Adam and his experience. Has a good understanding of, I think this route and this route, or these services on these routes might be interesting ones to try and poke the bear. So they'll go there and they're a little bit more targeted and focused because they tend to be more players of the game themselves, and they've got a lot more experience with that stuff. So the preservation crew have been really instrumental in helping us test that, along with the beta team. Have been doing a lot of really testing about that as well.
Can we actually talk about the preservation crew for a minute as well? So one of the questions we've had was regarding the preservation crew's current responsibilities, what they're in charge of at the moment, what the purpose of them is. So first of all, answer very basically, what is the purpose of the preservation crew? Why do we have them?
So the preservation crew exists to maintain and look after the content which is not the released, the stuff in current development, essentially. So broadly speaking, once it's released, it falls into their remit, goes onto their pile of things to look after.
Right.
This includes, I mean, initially the initial
Yep.
reason that they were formed was actually making the content work with Train Sim World 2. So it was going through each of the add-ons, because remember when we did Train Sim World 2, not everything was compatible and didn't come across in one go.
Yep.
So it was kind of like they were the team that went through, made it work, and then it was made so where we could release it. One of the things that so what they've been doing really well, actually, the West Somerset update is an example of a really good, positively received recent update that they put out, was they were doing a lot of really big deep dives on each route. They were going in and fixing known issues, they were implementing current features, adding lots of extra detail to the scenery, and actually giving them quite a loving, polished pass.
Yep.
The problem with that is that it's great for the route that gets the attention, but then there are so many routes that haven't got the attention, and so you end up with, I still see people talking on Facebook, on forums and so forth, saying, why can't I use XYZ Loco in Scenario Designer? Why isn't it working? And I'm sitting there going, it's because we haven't done it yet. It literally doesn't work in the Scenario Designer yet. So so what I talked to Adam about was refocusing that team towards focus on the key features that sort of make it a current route, if you like. So the new skies, the new skies for TSW2, the crossing gates, the fixing any critical bugs that are on the route, scenario designer support, that sort of thing, and go through rail driver support is another example, and go through everything as quickly as possible and get the whole lot up to that standard. And that's what they've been focusing on, which has been happening a lot faster.
Now, when you say they're going to be addressing critical bugs on these routes, because this is something that was asked, you see, what are the plans for the preservation crew? Apparently, we're not seeing a lot of updates for the older routes, apart from adding new features, like you mentioned, which is great, but there are still issues that have been present for years. Is this something that the preservation crew are still planning to address, some of the more impactful issues on the routes?
Yes. So by cycling around the routes faster, they can get to more of them, and get to those critical issues to where we can get everything up to a minimum standard of working, and rectify some of the issues that have crept in over time. And we're also wanting one of the things on my list is the trying to think of the word, the delay from when something is fixed to when it can come out. Now there's all sorts of perfectly good reasons to why there are problems and bottlenecks in getting stuff out, but they need to be got rid of, they need to be solved, and it's to where the fixes that are done, we've literally done the work. So what we need to do is get those fixes through QA and get them released. Now we're releasing on 7 different platforms and all of the associated paperwork and processes for all of those. So this is not just press a button and it's done. It's quite a lengthy process to do an update. But we need to be solving these bottlenecks and getting this stuff out. So again, that's one on my high on my hit list for what can we do to make this stuff much easier to get out, so that we can get this stuff to where when Adam's team has fixed it, as soon as like within a week, 2 weeks maybe, it's out. So that's that yet. I've got ideas, but we need to. This is where I want to get to, because it's not acceptable at the moment.
Yeah, and that literally answers one of the questions, which is, why is it not possible to release the Pres Crew updates within a week or so after Adam and the team finishing them? That is something you want to try and achieve.
Yeah, I want to get to, as soon as possible. I don't know whether we'll be able to achieve a week realistically, but so some of the problems there are, well, it's got to go through QA team. In order to go through the QA team, you've got to make, the 7 different platforms worth of builds. And go through all the different tests and so forth on there, and combine that with the fact that there's also then doubts about how well that testing process finding issues, given some of the issues that have gone out, and thereby by throwing other changes in there, we can't necessarily guarantee that we're not introducing new issues on. That's kind of where the brakes start coming on. Is fix our confidence in the testing and process, the identification and resolution of issues, and then look at how we can streamline getting these things in through QA and then actually up to the system. So these are kind of the areas, and I've got some ideas, and I know the team have got ideas as well. It's not like I'm the only one thinking of these things.
Now I'm sure you can imagine that obviously that kind of answer will that's going to be again one of the answers that comes as a slightly disappointing one to the community, because I think we've spoken about our testing before, we've spoken about our processes before, the steps we're taking to improve those bottlenecks, and at the moment it probably just feels a little bit like it's all talk until we actually start to make those progress. It is like we said, it's just, this is what we're working on at the moment. So I can appreciate if that is a disappointing answer, but that is the honest answer, and that is where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I guess basically what I want to, I want to share to everybody with that one is, I'm with you. Yeah, it's not good enough. It needs fixing, and I'm going to do what I can.
Yeah, great. On the topic of the preservation crew, in the chat, Tiger Panther Rowe said, shouldn't the preservation crew focus rather be on signalling and train control issues instead of, say, crossing gates, for example?
Well, it depends what the severity of the issue is, and if there are signalling issues on a route, then that would be something that they would be looking into where they can. Signalling is a highly specialist thing, so they often rely on the signalling team to support them, which I think is the main reason that Long Island hasn't had an update yet, because they started looking into it and it started becoming a bigger issue. So, there's they. Train control stuff they can look at. That's something they've got the team to look at now. But signalling is something they rely on the wider team to be to look at. So it's I think overall the list of priorities they're working to feel like the right list of priorities. It will feel more like it's right once we start shipping fixes, and you actually get the stuff that they're doing, because they have got a big backlog. One of the other questions on the list is about the rapid transit, still running in mode U after all this time, since the most recent preservation crew update. That's been fixed for ages, and that's it's kind of like we need to get that fix out there. So that fix specifically is one I'm going to be chasing when I get back, because I know that's going to be making people feel very pained when they run that route. So we need to, and that's it. The fix is done, so we just need to get it out. And I use the word just there. The word just is always a really cheap 4-letter word that generally hides a whole pile of pain and misery, but it does just need to get out.
And then obviously we've mentioned that the preservation crew are obviously working on bugs, they're working on fixing things. They've done a lot of that work, like you said. It's just unfortunately there is that bottleneck we've mentioned. Will they go back round on routes they've already taken a look at? So when they've completed the whole lot, should we say, and they've brought everything up to that initial standard, are they then going to go back in case there is more things that they might have missed a few things? I don't think we're ever going to get to a situation where a game is considered perfect, because there's no such thing as a perfect game. But are they going to continue? I'm sure in the future
we'll be adding new features to Train Sim World. And at that point, the feature, Adam's got this brilliant spreadsheet he's set up, which has got all of the routes and all of the features across the top, and then coloured boxes saying whether they're implemented and needed, relevant, and so on and so forth. As a new version of Train Sim World or any new core updates happens, then potentially there'll be more columns added to that spreadsheet, and then they'll have a bunch more new stuff to do. But there's always going to, if they literally run out of of features to upgrade on things, then there'll always be something that can go back and polish and improve and update. I don't see that happening, to be honest. I think they're always going to be really busy. They're not a big team. Now, if we get better at not adding to their workload, being really blunt about that, then they'll be able to go a bit faster. So we need to work on and actually support them better with that. But yeah, it's but no, they'll constantly keep looking at stuff.
Yeah. Now, before we go into some more hard hitting ones, would you like a slightly less difficult one?
Go on in.
So, how do you feel the dev team have done this past year and with how Train Sim World 2 has gone?
There's been some absolutely mammoth successes.
Such as?
And I'm going to put a big asterisk, and we'll come back to the asterisk, just because now everyone will be commenting on that. But successes, well, Sherman Hill's the longest route we've ever made, and a route that the team struggled to think that we would be able to do when it was first added, because it's a big long one. The decision to do different timetable for Gen 9 and Xbox, and do 100-car consists on Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 and PC. That's immense. That has actually, it's made such a huge difference to the driving experience of the big American trains. It's really, really cool. Then you've got, London Brighton with the busiest timetable that there's ever been even conceived of, let alone delivered, with getting on for 4,000 or 5,000 services in total, including all the AI ones, which is frankly ridiculous. I think Joe is still sleeping that one off. And it's then you've got Dresden Chemnitz, which is the route that we had. I think it's the most variety of rolling stock we've included in a base package. Normally it's a couple of trains, and that had 5-6 trains in it. So it's just like actually that and delivered a really nice service mode around that as well.
Did you say Dresden Chemnitz?
Nice, Dresden Riesa.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hold on a minute. When did that release? And how did I not notice?
Yeah, Dresden Riesa. And that's just the some of the more recent routes. I mean, it's great to get Amtrak back again, although the Boston route has a number of issues that need to be resolved still on the signalling and so forth. But I think there's been a lot of wins. It's not just been more DLC. It's been bigger, better in so many different dimensions compared to how it's gone before. And the team have done a really good job delivering that.
Do you compare any of our more recent routes to say the ones we've released, let's say in the past couple of months, to what we released January this year? So if you look at, I believe was it Southeastern that came out early this year? And if you look at that now compared to what we've recently released, how would you compare the two, as in to what we're delivering?
I mean, I think that the current crop of routes are coming out better than Southeastern High Speed. I mean, I love Southeastern High Speed. I know it's had some critics in the from when it was released, but in terms of some of the scenery, and I get why people are saying that, but absolutely, Southeastern High Speed's a fun route. But I think that for me, taking the Sherman Hill, London Brighton and the Dresden Riesa are our 3 best routes in those territories.
Yep.
Not just saying it because they're the latest ones. I genuinely think those actually have stepped up those 3 territories in quite a considerable way. It's whether it's in terms of the complexity, the variety, the service mode, physics, and all those things. They brought things forward in a really big way.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we've talked about what's gone well there, but would you like to talk about perhaps the things?
The asterisk.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's gone. There's a lot of stuff gone well, but there's an increasing pattern of things not going right. It almost seems like every route comes with one gotcha.
Yep.
Whether it, or every update has a gotcha in it, whether it's an introduction of the red light issue or crashing, and so on and so forth. So,
Yep.
it's, we've gone into that previously. I won't rehash what we've said before. Suffice to say, the same thing I said again, just that, it's not good enough. Recognize it. We are not unaware of the of where we're not doing as well as we should, and it's on my priority list when we get back to figure it out and step it up.
Yep. Now, do you know what the team's favourite project was to work on this year?
Oh dear.
Guess it's got to be a tough one, but has there been one that stood out from the others?
I think from conversations I've had with various members of the various teams, I mean, I know Joe obviously really liked London Brighton.
Oh, I think everybody knows Joe liked London Brighton.
Everyone knows Joe liked London Brighton.
Yeah.
But then what else have we got? I think I was talking to lead artist who worked on Sherman Hill, and I got the impression that he was enjoying that probably more than he'd enjoyed some of the other ones, because it was different. It was a different type of scenery, and I think you can tell from the way the scenery's come together that it looks really amazing considering the length of that route. It was he led that team and did a really good job of it. So full credit to Craig and his team. Signalling team. I'm going to go with London Brighton again. Signalling team. Because I know that it's Jeff and Ben that do the majority of the signalling work, although they're supported now by M as a third member. In fact, there's a fourth member on that team now, so that's a team that's growing quite considerably. It's up to 4 people now on signalling, and they've done a lot of work on the on that stuff. And Jeff and Ben in particular are not in particular. They're all real sticklers for detail. And have some great conversations with them, pointing out these things which just it's just like, I didn't even realize you could spot that stuff, and actually it's there, and they've made it different in these subtle ways, whether the arm leans to the left or leans to the right, and they've married it all up to the cab rides, and they get, it's, I remember talking to Ben when he did Southeastern High Speed, because he did all the signalling for Southeastern High Speed, and he'd had such a great time going through and getting all the different stuff. He started to teach himself 3D modeling and creating his own signal assets as well. You can tell when someone's doing those sorts of things that they're really getting into what they're doing. In terms of the train teams, I actually don't know. They just seem to enjoy whatever they get their hands on, to be honest. It's only really Tom, I think, on that team that he's the leader. He's actually a bit of a train nut himself. But the detail and the quality they kick out, they gotta love what they're doing. Because it's I always love seeing, when there's the first shots of a new train. It's always fun to see.
And how about you, Matt? What was your favourite project, personally?
I'm going to go with Risa.
Yeah.
Because, I enjoy playing that one, and therefore playtesting it and providing feedback was immensely pleasurable. But I say Sherman Hill was really good as well, but I didn't get as much time as I'd like to playtest that one. No, Dresden Risa probably for me stands out recently.
And the Pie Train has just asked in the chat, are all staff members big Trains fans?
No, it's not required that everyone is a Train fan in the company. That whether you wouldn't get very many people working for you if that was the case. There are a good number of Train nuts. And they're generally in more leadership positions, it has to be said, but not because they're trained nuts, because they're good at what they do. It's one of those things, you don't have to be nuts to work here, but it helps.
I certainly find that the members of staff that are train enthusiasts are really forthcoming with information when you need it. So sometimes community, you stump me with some of your questions, and I'll be like, I don't know what they're talking about. So I will go to somebody else in the company who knows a lot about trains, and I will get them to explain everything to me, so that if you need an answer on something, I can give you a nice detailed answer based off of information anybody in the company's given me, really. I think I come to you a lot, Mark.
You do, but you also I've seen some really interesting conversations you've had with Joe, with Michael, with James, Peter, lots of the team, to be honest, Tom as well. So it's there's a lot of passion in the company for those things. But equally, we've also got people who are really passionate about their particular skill areas. So people who like 3D modelers, the 3D artists, absolutely passionate about creating 3D models. They're not necessarily into trains, but it's really important to them to capture that 3D model in a really good way, and as well. There's lots of passion in the company for whichever area it is.
And then while we're talking about staff, can we talk about the size of our team now? Because this was actually asked on the forums. So comparing now to when Train Sim World 2 first launched, is the size of the Dovetail Games development team larger or smaller?
Oh, much larger.
Yes.
If you haven't, and if you don't, then I would recommend you do every now and again. But we are, I think the total company size is just shy of 200 now.
Oh gosh, is it really that big?
Wow. It's just shy of 200 now, and a large chunk of that growth is the Train Sim World 2 team. We just hired, I think there was 31 vacancies went up.
It was huge.
2 or 3 months ago, and a large chunk of those have been filled. I mean, we've got our gameplay team, the people who create service modes, bit where Joe and Michael, and Cameron and the like. That team's gone from 4 plus a team lead to 7 plus a team lead.
Which is a lot of people.
Signalling team has gone up to 4. Track team is still 2. Although we're supported heavily by Lucas as well, one of the third-party developers we work with. So I think the environment team, one of the things that we wanted to do with the environment teams is, because it's by far the biggest thing that we do. I mean, the trains are still are the other big thing that we do, but the environment team is generally, 5 or 6 or more people, plus additional support for outsource, and we'll split. What we're trying to do is to split that out. So we've currently got 2 concurrent teams working now. So Sherman and Chemnitz were built side by side. Which is the first time we've successfully done that, and that's kind of one of the things that went wrong with the rush hour update, is because we ended up having to do the routes one after the other, which was a silly idea for a simultaneous release. And the goal is to get that to 4 concurrent teams. Because the goal is not to necessarily to churn out more content.
Yeah.
The goal is to have smaller teams working for a longer time, so that they can take that time over what they're doing, because product will mature more over that period of time. But by having more concurrent teams working on it, you still get enough releases coming out regularly. It also means that those teams can be more likely to specialize, so they might become more likely, team A might be more likely to do UK routes, B more likely to do German routes, which means that they can start building up a skill-based, knowledge-based, in their own muscle memories, if you like, of knowing what signs and so forth. The obvious the things that almost everybody on this stream are going to be, it wouldn't even occur to you that these things would happen. But we have had instances where German signage has made it onto a UK platform, and for us, for the rail fans, you wouldn't even pick it. It just looks wrong. Why
I remember that.
But if you're not a rail fan, then that stuff is actually a really easy thing to do, because it's just a big list of stuff, in Unreal that you're picking from. By building up a bit more muscle memory and familiarity and their own knowledge of areas, they can start to become the enthusiasts and the passionate about the areas that they're doing. So it's I think it's going to be a really interesting way forward. So we're at two concurrent teams at the moment. We're going to be pushing it to the third team in the pretty much as soon as we get back, I think, and then we'll take it from there. So things are moving in the right direction. The team is growing, and like I said, the goal probably will result in more content, but the goal is it's not about producing more content. It's about taking more time to produce the content.
And obviously, while we're talking about that's the development team, I think we've touched on QA. Just, do you have a rough idea of how many QA testers we have?
I think it's the last time I spoke with QA about this and got the numbers, it was something like 12 internal. We've got 10 via a different mechanic. I can't remember exactly how that worked, but there's another 10, and then there's we call upon external QA. So this is what I mean by that is other companies that test games. Essentially, these are experts at testing games. So we'd send the game to them with the test plans. They then play the game and send the stuff back. This is not like beta test. This is core testing. And then obviously we've got the beta team as well, which we've grown a bit recently as well. And I've got some ideas about how I can grow the beta team as well. So
actually, Deadly Diddly has just asked a really interesting question here, which is 200 employees and no Xbox beta testers. Now, we want to be able to have beta people using consoles, right? But we can't.
I'd love to be able to do that, but literally the platforms have no method for it. The last round of investigation we did into this, which and the answers came back just before the break at Christmas. Essentially, there's no way. The console vendors, essentially, once a game is released, that's it. In the traditional games console world, that's it. It's out. So the Xbox, for example, has the Insider program, which doesn't apply once you've released. It only applies before release and only applies to the core game, not to DLC. So at the moment, we don't have any options. No, you can't release DLC locked behind a code because the codes don't work until the DLC is released. I've had a couple of ideas, again, in my little notes document about other avenues to explore. And I'm sure people will look at me with squinty eyes and go, what? When I say them. But, it's like, bear with me, this might work. So I would desperately like to do that. And one of the things that I want to sort of do as an intermediary on that, though, is I want to talk to players who are console players that have a PC, which sounds like a really weird thing to say, because if you're a console player, surely you're not playing it on PC. But if you're a console player and you think about it on your console, but you've got a controller for your PC and you play the game, you can play the game on your PC or on a PC, then I want to hear from you, because at least that way I've got people playing the game with the controller, because the current beta bunch, not to be a little bit rude here, but they're all a bunch of PC master racers, so it's a little bit hard convincing them to play with the controller. So okay, go on.
I was going to say, so for example, I could do it now. I could pick up my PlayStation controller and I could play the game with my controller on the PC. Theoretically, then anybody with a PC who's willing to buy a controller could also do it. They don't necessarily. Do they have to have the console or just the controller?
No, but what I want is what I'm looking for people is particularly not just PC players who are like, oh, if I have to use a controller. I want people who are the controller is how I play the game.
Yeah.
I want people who are more about the console, are more about the controller than they are about. I've got my controller here. I've got hooked into my PC, as well as what I use on the consoles. But So, I mean, again, I'm not making promises. This is not opening the floodgates, but it's another avenue I want to explore to try and get some more controller players along the beta team. Because again, I don't think there's many people even in the beta team currently use a controller.
Because I'm sure that will obviously help with situations where people are more familiar with the controller than the mouse and how they interact with the game and such. But that still won't address any problems that would be console specific. So it's sort of, it would help, but it's not a perfect solution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's totally.
Yeah. All right, let's go into some more questions because we have so many. Last year, apparently, you said one of the great things about the roadmap is that if a player sees their local line on it, for example, they could then get in contact and offer assistance with getting reference. Now DLCs are put on the roadmap much later in development cycle, and in the case of Sherman Hill, sometimes go into the incorrect category. Has this aspect been lost?
We tried to make up for it by asking direct questions. Again, somebody else actually asked in another question about the horseshoe curve and Sherman Hill questions that went out about getting reference and so forth, which are very helpful. And so I think there's a goal to do more of that, be a bit more direct about the questions, about the areas that we would like support.
Yes, there is.
I mean, the roadmap's a whole separate question. But we know what we don't know, or where we think we've got gaps, and we'll try and do more of. That's worked really well for us, actually, and I hope the community have appreciated that as well. So we want to try and do more of that and involve you all more in some of this process as well.
Yeah, opening up the questions to the community, asking them for help has proved to be very successful, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're now talking to the gentleman with the American train horns, and I know Adam is doing a lot of work with him.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. I know that Skyhook have made good progress with audio and various other bits and pieces that they were interested in on their route as well. So it's just like, as a process, that seems to work. There's it doesn't yield tons of helpful stuff, but it only has to yield the one bit of helpful stuff that moves everything on for it to have been worth gold. So I say that my view on those two requests specifically is I think they've been very successful, and that's certainly something I want to do more of.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's something we can definitely work towards, perhaps improving how that works. But it's glad to hear it's been a success. Now, as that question was talking about the roadmap, can we actually talk about the roadmap briefly? Because I think this is something that we've definitely seen the players have felt has been becoming gradually less useful. It's becoming less, not reliable, but they're not getting the information perhaps as early as they were at the start of the year. A lot of things at the moment tend to go straight into in production and not into in planning. What are your thoughts on the roadmap and how it's currently working?
Definitely not as well as I'd like it to. Same as I'm sure players are not seeing that it's working as well. I mean, one example, so we've had a number of areas where the roadmap has failed. One of which is the too early announce of Rush Hour.
Yep.
And another one being the saga of the Class 313.
Oh gosh, the 313, the most eagerly anticipated Loco we've ever released.
Train, yeah. And
Train,
it's it's difficult to strike the balance because at no point was the Class 313 wrong.
Yep.
But it was probably in the wrong state because I'm sure there were times when it said it was in production where it probably wasn't in production.
Yeah.
I think there's also a perception from people that once they see it on the roadmap, then it's probably not too far away. And when it comes out a year, 18 months even later, then it's just like, why did it take that long?
Yep.
And well, it didn't. It's just that we knew about it a year in advance, so we put it in the roadmap. So it's trying to find the right balance of meeting people's expectations about from when something arrives in the roadmap, when does that, when is a roughly relevant time frame for it to be releasing, but also making sure that stuff doesn't go on there that's wrong,
Yes.
or potentially causes other problems, because one of the benefits of stuff going on the roadmap is then we can talk about it openly as well, and we can have these lovely discussions on the forums. So another example of where actually we held the announcement for Dresden Chemnitz onto the roadmap for quite a while before, after where we actually wanted to put it on the roadmap, and the reason was because the stock pack wasn't finalized. And we ended up putting the announce out without it being finalized, so it didn't mention the Railpool 185 until some plum streamed it accidentally, but never mind.
Oh yeah, I know. Who would do something like that?
I know, it's totally careless. Thankfully that person's been banned from streaming ever again. Yeah, it's so we ended up, just adding that stuff in there. Well, the preservation crew stuff staying up, coming forever is kind of a symptom of a separate problem.
Yeah.
That's not a roadmap issue. But in that instance, it's completely accurate. That's not a roadmap problem at all. That's the other bottleneck problem of releasing stuff that I've talked about. But stuff not being on the roadmap. So, for example, there's a UK route which is not on the roadmap, coming out before Harlem.
And we can't talk about it, and we can't give you any more details, and we can't share information. We would love to, but we can't. And so this is where we have the problem with the roadmap, because at the moment our advice is, if it's not on the roadmap, then it's not happening, which isn't necessarily the truth at the moment. Is it? Because it could be happening. It's just we're not allowed to talk about it. So yes, we know the can of worms we've just opened.
The roadmap is a really good expression of what we can talk about safely right now.
Yes.
Essentially, it's actually more about these. These are the cards that are on the table. So Dino Bassi, why not put it on the roadmap? Well, the reason is, it may move. It may come out after Harlem. It may change. It's just like there are too many variables on it to be sure of what we want to say about that. And this happens quite often. Yeah. It is why sometimes routes go. One of the comments I've seen is, why does things go straight into production?
Yeah, and this is why.
And quite often they go straight into production when they're well in production as well. The reason is purely because, until it's well in production, there's still potentially too many variables in some cases. So, and these are symptoms of some other problems that I'm trying to resolve as well, in terms of the planning stuff and some of the timescales issues, some of the things that still fall out from what happened with Rush Hour. So it's kind of the golden rule has been to always be crystal clear on the roadmap, that what's on the roadmap is true and right. And I think that's correct, but unfortunately it's becoming it's actually becoming less useful, because that means there's not a lot on it.
I think that's something I've seen the community talking about as well. We're not giving as much information as we were. Like Tintin's just said, the roadmap used to be good for keeping track of bug fixes. We used to be giving them information about things that are in planning, and I think we quickly discovered that the bug fixing, for example, that is impossible for us to keep track of, because when bugs are getting fixed, they move so quickly that in the time between when we've put it on the roadmap and the roadmap was actually due to go out, the fix itself could have already gone. Or it might not have been worked, or they might have found 10 other different problems, so it's not happening anymore, and it's been, it's ended up being a much higher priority, and it goes flying down. And it's really hard to keep track of the bugs. But the other stuff, the in planning, the in production, the upcoming, it's something we're definitely looking at improving, isn't it? Because we don't want you to feel like we're not giving you information. but we also want to make sure that what we are giving you is accurate. It's a tough one. It's a tough balance to strike, and we're aware that at the moment the community aren't very satisfied with what the roadmap is offering.
No, I mean, I don't think we're satisfied with what the roadmap is offering either, because we want to be able to, be upfront. And the dev team particularly, the roadmap has been a breath of fresh air, because all of a sudden we can talk about things before the day they're being released, which has opened up the ability to have these conversations about, hey, we could use some help with sounds or whatever. So the roadmap is important for us as well as for you.
Yeah. Right. Let's carry on with some more questions, shall we?
Go for it.
Let's go into some of the fixing issues as we're on the topic of that. Update to 4.26. Has the upgrade to the Unreal Engine 4.26 been as successful as you'd hoped? Everything seemed more stable, less bugged prior to the big update. And then there's a part 2 of this question. Would it have been easier to have made Train Sim World 2 Rush Hour as an entirely separate game?
I mean, I think on the whole, the 426 upgrade has done very well. There's been some big performance improvements. People were saying, that wasn't an expectation particularly, but I saw a lot of people saying they were seeing performance improvements and other things. But there were some other changes rolled in at the time, which I think the red light issue came in with this stuff. And it kind of, what it does is it muddies the water, and sort of like it looks like it was all 426, and actually there was other stuff, and it wasn't necessarily all 426. So I think on the whole, 426 upgrade went quite well, but certainly from a code and upgrade perspective internally, it didn't take any longer really than anyone was anticipating, which was a long time, to be blunt. I think it was a good 9 months work in total. So it's...
Yeah, the 4.26 thing, the performance, did you say it was better?
Yeah, when we originally launched the 426 core update, I remember people saying that they saw some performance improvements on their legacy routes.
On the legacy, right? Sorry, but there's a few. There's a lot of community sentiment that would say that it's actually done the opposite. It's been a bit more unreliable than it has been with regards to making improvements. As in, it has a tendency to cause crashes.
I'm not sure the 426 is what's been the cause of that, though. So performance issues, certainly with the newer routes, issues with those routes. There's been a number of updates, including the one that was done just at the end of the last update we did just before we broke up there. So that are still working, and then we haven't finished. They're still uncovering more issues. Like for example, the crash on London Brighton, or I think all platforms had, when you did the first service run in the journey and you arrived in the Gatwick Express into Brighton, opened the doors and the game crashed.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with 426 at all. It was a platform setup error. So I think it's easy to blame 426 for a lot of these things, and actually the product is getting really complicated, the number of moving parts is quite considerable. And one of the things that the team is that the technical director is looking at the moment is figuring out how can we start automating some of the testing, how can we start putting health checks in the editor itself. So as we find something like the thing that caused this crash when you arrived at Brighton, well, in theory, we could just have a button which you press, which does a bunch of sanity checks and make sure that isn't done that way anymore. Okay. So that before any code any content is submitted, it's done a sanity check on the content to say, yeah, this is good, and then every time we find a problem, we then never find that problem again, essentially.
Yeah. Did you find the 426 brought problems that you were not expecting when that update was released? Because I think leading up to it, everybody was feeling rather confident, but obviously it did come with issues.
Such a long time ago now.
I
It's
know.
difficult to remember. I think it did bring issues. I don't know. I couldn't talk with confidence about whether they were expected at this time. But because it was a while ago now, and I just can't remember what happened then. I know it was tough, and it wouldn't surprise me if some unsurprised things came up. But like I said, there are a lot of issues in the upgrade that weren't 426. There were other issues, and because they all came at the same time, it's kind of like there was a sea change, definitely, from when the new core rolled out. That everything looked like it wasn't running as well, but I think that was a combination of a wider number of things, and actually that's more about us, stepping up and finding these issues. Russell Butterfield actually says 426 seems to step in the wrong direction. Performance has gone from good to poor. Can you DM me about what your test cases are for that, Russell? I'm interested to see, because I've seen a lot of people saying that, raw simple examples like for like, it was better in 426. But obviously, a route like London Brighton, which didn't exist prior to 426, you can't really compare the two. It's Is it that the newer routes that we're making are running slower for you, or is that a route that was running great is now running less great? Because that would be really interesting. I'm not aware of that being the case.
There was one person, Jake Short said, I tried submitting a support ticket after some bad texture glitching that came up since 426. So,
on the Xbox.
Yeah, that should have been resolved now, but obviously that's just an example of what
that was an example of an unexpected issue.
Yes. Yeah,
that
absolutely.
would be a good example of an unexpected issue. Yes, that's a good one actually. That has been a complete pain in the proverbial.
And on the topic of the game engines as well, obviously it brought into debate the future of the game, because it was quite timely getting everything ready for 426. I think it had a lot of people working on it to get everything ready to be upgraded, and it made a lot of people worry about what's going to happen in the future if this needs to be the case every single time we update the game engine. So, first of all, do you know what would be the next game engine we'd use?
As at this time, there is no plan at all to upgrade our game engine again. Not on a version of Unreal 4. Yep. So 426 is the one that we're on. 427 is the latest, and I believe will be the final version of Unreal 4. And 427 primarily brings changes related to cinematic content. So movie creation, video creation. Which doesn't apply to us. Yep. So there's no point going through any process of updating for it. Beyond that is Unreal 5. Yep. Now, Unreal 5 isn't out, and I don't know when it will be in a state where we can look at it, and I don't necessarily know what the right approach is for us to take Unreal 5. So it's, at this point in time, yes, at some point I envisage us going to Unreal 5, but I have no idea what that's going to look like, and I don't see us rushing to Unreal 5. We are not going to be the first game that jumps onto Unreal 5 by any stretch of the imagination. We don't need to. It may completely change how we make routes because of all of the new lighting and landscaping and so all the the pixel systems that are in there. There's some really cool stuff. And it completely might change how we have to do things. So I want to, we're going to definitely, the team are aware of Unreal Engine 5, obviously, and certainly I think the engineering team have been tinkering away in their own time because, well, they're interested in that stuff. But it's, we're not, I'm not going to make any, plans or about Unreal Engine 5 at this point. It will be out for a good while, I think, before we rush to it. And we're not planning on upgrading from Unreal Engine 4.26 either. So what that means is that where we spent 7 or 8 months upgrading the Unreal Engine before, we won't be doing that again, which means we build on a firm basis of stability now going forwards, rather than constantly rebuilding the foundations of the house like we've been doing.
Right, can we talk about Spirit of Steam? I've seen some people chatting about it in the comments. Obviously there's only so much we can answer with regards to the Spirit of Steam, so I'm gonna ask all these questions, and then I'm afraid you're gonna have to give me the answer. So, will Spirit of Steam be like Rush Hour with the season ticket? Tangible info regarding Spirit of Steam, routes, logos, when? Will there be an update on Spirit of Steam? Can we expect Steam release for the big 3? Will the Steam release be Loco only or with a route? Those are the big ones I want you to answer right now.
And I can't answer any of them.
There you go.
Now is not the time. So one of the key questions there is, will we get a tangible update? And I don't have a tangible update for you at this point. Steam work is in progress. I have seen a moving Steam engine in the game powered by Steam. It didn't look like a Steam engine. It looked like a box, but it was powered by Steam, and Semigraph was doing its thing. So it's, Steam tech is progressing at a decent pace. But that's only a start of the story. Once you've got Steam tech kind of working, you've then got to make the particle effects look good, sounds look good, and we're starting to get some the audio. We've got someone on the audio team focusing on looking at that side of things now. So it's it's still in development. It's ramping up now. The number of people working on Steam is going up rapidly. But I don't have anything to tell you that is of substance.
One thing I do have to say on that actually is I have Sam in the background, and apparently the scope of the project has actually changed quite a bit since we first announced it, to the point where even getting the Steam engines working has taken longer than we anticipated. He said it's taken 6 months longer than we'd initially hoped. So it's definitely it's a work in progress, but it's just slow and steady, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to make sure it's right and it's awesome. We also want to make sure it's accessible for people, and it's got to be deep. It's got to be a nice, feels good Steam simulation. It's we'll have more information when it's the right time to give you information, but we'll try and give it to you as early as possible without delaying it till the last minute.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to give you more information, but we're not gonna be. If we gave you the information we had right now, there's every chance that it could change. That the information we're currently giving you is actually incorrect. That the scope of the project could change. I think we did it before. We did it with Dresden, didn't we? We announced the scope of Dresden too soon, and then we had to pull back. So we can't give you too much information on that, and we know everybody's super excited about it. But yeah, we want to make sure that Steam is done right.
Totally. I'm a huge Steam fan myself. I absolutely cannot wait. But
I'm actually looking forward to it as someone that has absolutely no idea how to get the Steam engine moving. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, it's got to be amazing.
I mean, didn't Jamie blow up an engine at one point on TS?
One or two, yeah.
Expect that to happen a lot for me.
It's good fun. It's really good fun. Steam is where there's a real challenge with Steam. So,
yeah. Right, let's go into some of our more general questions. Actually, I'll ask some of the ones from the chat. Can you explain the difference between TSW2 and TS in terms of simulgraph, etc.? Is Train Sim World 2 more accurate in terms of physics?
Yes, bluntly. So Train Simulator Classic, Train Simulator 2022, the older of the two products, has I think 6 different physics models, and then those different physics models are configured. There's quite a lot of configuration options. It's quite a decent simulation model, but it is fundamentally 6 models, and then they are configured to the various specs of the various trains, and it becomes very difficult to capture some of the really subtle nuances. So diesel hydraulics that have got one fluid coupling and two torque converters, for example, you can't really capture that, but you can capture that in the way that the train behaves in the tractive effort graphs, but not in the internals. Whereas the way that TSW works is that and it was done specifically because we wanted to do more than what we've done before, works at a very much smaller component level, to where the fluid coupling and the torque converters I just talked about there exist physically. You just literally drag another torque converter on, wire it in, and then feed it in via a gearbox into the rest of the system, and so on. And then each of those boxes has a fairly extensive amount of configuration on it. So instead of having 6 things that you can customize, essentially it's an infinite number of things, because you can just lay it out in a different way, and so on and so forth. So it means that the team can capture a lot more nuance about each of the different trains and how they work. And one of the things that's really interesting about it is, I was talking to Ed some time ago, actually, Ed Fisk, and he was saying that developing train simulation feels much more like an engineering job. And I mean a traditional engineering job, like chemical, physical engineering job, than a coder's job. Whereas in Train Simulator, it's a coder's job. And it's a coder that understands physical and chemical engineering and so forth. But whereas on Train Sim World, you're wiring pipes and valves and electrical things together, and it's a different way of looking at it. That's quite challenging, because additionally, Train Simulator tends to focus on what I call the effect of simulations, the output. The Train Sim World focuses on the cause of the simulation. So it is you build an engine together, build the traction system and the brake system inside SemiGraph, and then you can take it for a test run, and using the graphing systems draw out the fairly standard tractive effort over speed graphs that you can see if you look at. But if that graph is wrong, you have to go back to your SemiGraph and tweak your traction motor system, tweak the propulsion system design, and then rerun the test. It's very realistic in that respect. That's kind of a real world approach to modify the engine, rerun the test, look at the output graphs.
So let's give you a hypothetical. Does that mean that somebody with actual engineering expertise could theoretically make a train in our game if they were taught basic coding?
We don't need any coding at all. You don't need any coding at all. If you understand how trains are made, what traction motors do, and what torque converters do, and in all these different purposes and the different types of engine, then you can engine locomotive. Then it probably wouldn't. You need a bit of training in SemiGraph and the details of that. You could figure out how to wire that up, and the actual output, what it looks like as the graph. One of the things that you can see in SemiGraph is, if, for example, you look at the way that the American triple valve brake setup works on for the braking systems over there, the way that it's drawn in SemiGraph, so the thing that is actually executed really doesn't look a million miles away from the graphs you see in the manual. You quite often see schematic systems graphs in the manual about here's how the pipes and valves connect to each other, and you can kind of one-to-one see the two. It's not completely one-to-one because there's practical constraints we need to think about, but it is amazing how close it is.
Phil W's asked, so have SemiGraph for newer locos become more complex as time has progressed, so they're becoming more and more accurate? That they should be, right?
Yeah, I mean, even when we went to, I think the BR143 was a massive step up in complexity, which is the one we did for Rosa Ignored. And it has been getting progressively, it's been appropriately complex, I'd say. That we don't just add complexity for the sake of it. But what it means is that, so when we did the Bakerloo line, the 1972 stock needed camshaft control systems to be implemented. So new SemiGraph components got added and so forth, so that we could so that we could capture a camshaft control system and implement that. But it just means that every time, if you want a new camshaft control system, there's no scripting. It's just drag and drop the appropriate box on, wire it up. I mean, I'm vastly oversimpling. I'm sure Ed is watching the stream going, whoa. It's complicated in a way that is more appropriate to the domain that it's solving, rather than you need to be a PhD scripter to be able to do an engine implementation. If you understand engines, you should be able to make an engine.
Yeah. All right, let's get some more questions answered, because we have not even made a dent on our document yet, Matt.
I told you this would be a long stream.
It's going to be a long stream, and we're going to answer every single one. Let's have a look. I'd like to get some insights into Dovetail Games' future plan, especially when it comes towards pricing. Pricing. There is an established price for routes and locos, and it's often been said that DTG feels unable to change these. With inflation as a thing, I'm curious to know how DTG wants to deal with this in the future. Will the amount of work put into the routes be reduced, so something that this particular player feels that is happening at the moment, to justify the current prices, or will there be a price increase and more work will be put in to make a route feasible?
Inflation doesn't really come into it in this particular case, because there's so many variables, and inflation is just one of them, and a relatively small variable in that particular part. So as I said earlier on, we talked about how the team has grown massively, we're trying to push the team. We're trying to push ourselves. We need to push ourselves to also then make it work at the end of the day properly. We are always trying to push harder. But not every project has the same amount of time. It's just commercial realities, I'm afraid, folks. But there are release dates we have to hit for various reasons, and that means sometimes a project gets more time than another project gets. Now, by splitting out into multiple concurrent teams, as discussed earlier on, that means in theory we can go back to having a bit more time for each of them. To go towards that side of things. But that's why you'll find one route is a shorter route and another route is a longer route, because otherwise than that, all the routes would be an average size as well. Whereas sometimes you want to have one route which breaks the bank, if you like, in terms of pushing the distances further than we've gone before, rather than just saying, 70 miles is kind of like where we want to set at. Well, no, we don't. We want to keep going longer. If we can keep going longer, but we can't make every route a long one.
Yeah.
At the moment, anyway. So we're also trying to improve the tooling, so that the amount that of effort required to make a route, make trains, probably make route is where you're going to see most of the effort, because 3D models for trains just take the time they take to make. It's not really much you can do to improve that time and not keep the quality up. But in terms of improving the route, Sherman Hill, for example, we improved the auto generation system. Primarily around texturing the ground, because we wanted to have something which would just put down not random, but so there wasn't just one flat texture, because then an artist would have to go through and make it more realistic. So one of the things Houdini the system was able to do was go through and apply we wrote some logic and some code for it so that it could improve and do that texturing, and that saved quite a lot of time. Now, we'd hoped that we'd get more out of it. And I was
going to say, because that didn't end up being as successful as we'd hoped, and didn't that actually result in which one? A delay? It resulted in a delay for one of the routes, didn't it?
It resulted in a cut. It resulted in the dropping of track 3, which meant we instead of delivering a 116-mile route, which was the original plan, we ended up delivering a 76-mile route. I think it was 70, something like that. So it was. So it's still a mammoth amount of work that the team did, but that was because originally what we'd hoped was that the autogen would also put all of the brush down, all of the bushes and so forth, and be able to make that, but it wasn't able to come off not without looking auto-generated, essentially.
Yeah, because
any auto-generation system, it should not look auto-generated. You have failed if that's what happens.
I was going to say this was definitely, I believe, a concern the players had when we first talked about the auto-generation, is that we were going to rely on it too heavily, and it was going to result in our routes just not looking right.
No, it's absolutely always going to be our priority that we are supported by the autogen system where it makes sense and where it genuinely saves time, but it's still, it is that hand built side of the routes but we want to be able to get the team to focus the hand creation, all the handwork they create, on the stuff near the track, the buildings, the stations that you see, that the iconic buildings, are not the distant scenery. So if there's anywhere we can try and auto-generate, it's going to be the background scenery. It consumes an enormous amount of time, and is one of the reasons that affects mileage being cut back, if anything, is the ability to fill that scenery and not have it run out. So auto-gen would mean that you could build that as far and wide as you want to, and it wouldn't, because it would just press a button and it spend an hour longer doing it, for example. But in this case, in the case of Sherman Hill, it didn't look right. It wasn't good enough, so we didn't use that. Whereas the ground texturing was good enough, so we put use the ground texturing, and then put hand-built scenery on top of it. Was a nice compromise, but it meant that we were about 30 miles short of where we wanted to be.
Now, the chat are currently asking us, and we've had a lot of questions similar to this on the forums as well, asking if we're going to be creating specific routes, if we're going to be creating specific locos, if we're going to be creating specific trains. To give you an idea, just a few of the questions we've had are like, is there any possibility of having an Italian, a Scandinavian route from Holland, something more from Europe? Then we've been asked if there's going to be any news with the BR101 still missing on Munich Augsburg. Basically, we'll go into more details on some of the stuff that already exists, but can we have an answer from you with regards to anybody that's posted a suggestion in the forum thread for the Q&A?
Yeah, I mean, any suggestions for routes that you want to make, post them in the suggestions threads on the forum. One of the other questions actually that was asked is, do those things get looked at? Do we look at those? Yes, and the answer is absolutely yes. In fact, we fundamentally made it part of our process for picking up routes that we do that now. So we have this process called a LAMP process, which and one of the steps on that process is to review every route proposal against community feedback. Yep. And the things that are being posted, and the person who does these reviews, Steve, is really good. He understands the community really well, but he goes through and compares what people are saying and how that matches up against the route proposal, not just in terms of the exact route proposal, like here's a route from A to B, how many people have asked for that route from that A to that B, with those trains on it, but is this route A to B is actually similar routes that people have asked for, and actually, yeah, this type of route seems to be quite well requested as well. So, or not, we get back in this process a good overview, but that overview, one of the key components of that is what do we think the community would think about that, based on what they've asked for.
Now, one of the things I think we did, was it this year? I think it was this year, the start of the year, I think. We shared what the most popular requests were. We didn't give you the exact figures or anything like that, but we did give you a list on stream of what everybody was asking for and which ones were the big hitters. That is something we can look at doing again, but it is a very timely process. So I will look into that in the new year, see what we can do to share some of that information, see if what was popular this year is still popular again. But yeah, if you made a suggestion, if you asked for a specific route or a specific loco in the in the forum thread. It's best put in the suggestions. But can we talk about perhaps the fact that there was a lot of questions with regards to, are we going to broaden our scope with what we deliver? So currently we obviously we tend to do UK, Germany, USA. That's pretty much all we do. Is this going to change? Are we going to be relying on third parties only to be creating stuff from elsewhere? Because there is obviously still a demand for more adventurous routes.
It's really, really difficult. There's a number of different challenges. One of them is the expertise, which is where third-party developers come in, because if you're a Spanish development group, you're going to do a really good job making a Spanish route, because it's kind of what you live and breathe and you know. So for one, approach to this, I'm definitely going to be looking to see where we can bring more third-party developers on that can start broadening out that interest level and bring their expertise into the game as well. That we get a lot of requests for all sorts of different countries to be developed. One of the problems with developing for a country is, and I've said this a couple of times, is that they become one-hit wonders. In that you develop a route but the trains that come with that route, and that becomes all you ever see on that, and it's and then it becomes a problem of, well, that route isn't complete without 3 other loco trains that run on that route, and if you've got those, then there's these other routes that you ought to make for them to run on, and you start building. Why would you not build the same ecosystem that you've got? And so it becomes almost as big of a disappointment then that it doesn't go beyond one route. And every time you add one route, one new country, then it takes a slot out from the existing ones, and you can see it wouldn't take long before you'd be in a situation where you'd have half a dozen countries and you'd be releasing a UK route every couple of years. So it would be, or a German, any particular one country. I pick UK route obviously because I'm in England, but it's so it's difficult. That's not to say it's a problem that shouldn't be solved. And by adding multiple concurrent teams, we kind of lean towards being able to hopefully move in that direction. I have done some route proposals recently for non-UK, US, and Germany routes. So these are looked at and these are critically reviewed all the time. We haven't just literally said nope, not doing it. We're always looking at that and re-reviewing it and saying is that still valid? Is that still right? Is this actually a good time for that route to go in there? Which was the sort of kind of along the lines of how the French route, the TGV route, got into the plan, and that went down really well. So it's. So at this point, I can't announce anything. There's nothing to announce, but we're not ruling anything out. But it's difficult for us to do other countries for these reasons.
Yeah. So it's not completely off the table, but it's unlikely.
I'm going to go with unlikely for these reasons that I've mentioned, which is why I would rather put more effort into helping third-party developers come on board that can then nurture that community with the level of content and the variety of content that will deliver a good experience in that area, rather than it just being a one-hit wonder, which would be great for day one, but then you immediately will start to feel sad that there's not another one coming for 10 more years.
Yeah, I think we might have given a similar answer to that before, so I don't think much has changed since we answered that initially. No. Changed. And I believe someone actually hit the nail on the head here, which is also that if say you did make the one route, you'd make a limited amount of locos or trains to go with it, and if you were doing, let's say, a busy area somewhere else in the world, you run the risk of making it feel a bit empty, because you're not going to be, you'd have to keep providing future content for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean that's what I'm saying. That's where the one hit and nothing else becomes a problem, because it'll feel like the route deserves additional content to bring it, to make it better, all that it can be.
Yep. Now, some more questions. There seems to be a distinct lack of DTG produced Loco DLCs on the roadmap. Are you abandoning the model of Loco DLCs, or is this just a consequence of how things happen to line up in the release cycle?
We're definitely not abandoning Loco DLCs, totally not. I hadn't realised it had been so long since.
No, I hadn't until I read that. But they're right. We haven't had a Loco release for a while.
Well, there's been Loco release. I think the 313 was probably the last one, actually. But that obviously has been on there for since the dawn of time, when tablets were made of stone.
When the internet first existed. Yeah, correct.
So it's difficult. But no, Loco DLCs are not off the table. They just aren't on the plan, on the roadmap.
Yeah. And while we're on the topic of Loco releases, DLC specific one here, why didn't the DB BR101 come with the IC cab car? Now, that was asked a lot at the time, because this was a huge point of contention for the community. And yes, you guys made yourselves really clear that you weren't happy on this one. So what happened there, Matt?
It was there was a couple of things. It was we got all the reference for the BR101. We don't have the reference. We didn't. I think we might have now. We didn't have the reference for the cab car, and we'd already built, or mostly built, the train. So the project was well underway, and it was, this cab car's just not. We're not going to get. So what will happen is we'll go into a project and we'll start the main thrust of it, getting things moving, because we can't wait forever. And more often than not, what happens is the reference comes in later on for some of the other bits. And in this particular case, it wasn't coming in for the cab car. So we weren't being able to get what we needed for it. And it felt like the BR101 without the cab car still made sense as a product. Not ideal, but it made sense as a product. Whereas we couldn't not release something in that slot, having built all of that content, not knowing at least when we were going to get the cab car. So the thought there was, well, put the BR101 out there with the coaches is still, a really great Loco to drive with the new coaches, first new coaches that Germany has seen in TSW since the Dostos that everyone loves so much. So I think that was, it's a good driving experience, and it was good to do. No, we think basically we've heard you. It's
and this is a question I've seen on the forums as well as in the chat. Why don't we delay things when that happens? So if we knew that we weren't going to be able to deliver an accurate representation of it, why didn't we hold it back? Did we want it to be accurate or on time?
It's difficult to and there's no single answer for this one, and it's something we'll take as we go. So in this particular instance, if it was the back end of an ICE1, for example, and you couldn't get the reference for the because the two ends of an ICE2, the two ends of an ICE2 are different. So let's say, for example, you could get the reference for one end and not the other end. You have no pack. You can't release it without the other end. Whereas the BR101, while not ideal, does still work without the cab car.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're looking at stuff, because having already spent a considerable amount of time and effort making stuff, because we'd already got underway with the BR101, to shelve and park all of that stuff and get on with the next thing, that's a tough decision to make. That's a very difficult decision to make, and that needs to be made at the sort of the highest levels of the company, because it's bluntly, it's an expensive job making these trains. They're not cheap to make, not just the amount of time, and so we need to work out. And these release dates that we talked about before, because of the business, we have to hit these release dates. We'd be trying to start a new pack to hit the same release date. It's just not going to happen, is it? It becomes, it's one of those things when you're in a situation where there's no right answer. And so what you try and do is you work out what works. And then you can go with that, and that's what we ended up with there. And the BR101's still gone out as a really popular pack, and we're still looking for the right opportunity to, because I think the cafe car is missing from the set as well. So we're sort of how can we do that? So it's still on the back of our minds. How can we introduce that?
Well, I was going to say, because obviously when the community are as vocal as they are about how much they disagree with the decision we've made. So, for example, people did not hold back on your feelings with the 101. Does that sink in? Does that impact how you make decisions going forward? Because obviously, what do you do with that feedback? Because if say you can't change it, what do you then do with that information that the community have given you?
Well, yes, we always listen to what particularly whenever we want to make a decision. If something similar has gone back in the past, we can reflect on the way that decision was received. But that doesn't mean it won't happen. We wouldn't do the same decision again, because sometimes it might still just be the best thing that you can do at the time. Yep. But that's not because we're ignoring what's gone on before. It's we definitely factor it in. We heard you. We totally heard you. It's all I'll say is it's considered. Every case is considered. There is no single process for all this stuff. Then that would be wrong. It's not a case that if this then that in all cases. It's what's right for this pack at this time in these circumstances. What can we do? And then we can think about that. But we always think about what players will say, and also what they have said in similar circumstances in the past. So your feedback is we're there.
And just to quickly circle back, obviously you mentioned something about a restaurant car. That wasn't a promise, was it, Matt?
No.
That was just something.
So promise for the cab car either at this point either. So it's but what I'm saying is that the full BR101 set includes the A, the B, the cafe, and the cab car, and we've done the A, the B, and the BR101, and that's the set that's out there. Those other two bits are in the back of our minds for maybe at some point.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to some more questions. Let's see. What lessons have you learned in the last 12 months, and will your strategies change? I mean, there's a lot gone on this year.
There's a lot gone on this year. I think there's a lot of lessons been learned across every area of the business. I feel certain that there'll be more lessons learned next year, and every year after that, because that's just the nature of life. But I hope we improve from each of those. Will your strategies change? That's a broad question, probably for other people. I'd like to think that we are learning from things that we're improving, and also looking at things we've done well and doing more of them.
Yeah. Let's see. Which route are you most proud of making in 2021, and why? I think we sort of covered that one a little bit earlier.
Yes, I think so. I think from my perspective, it'll be the Risa route. Yeah.
This is a bit of a big one, actually. What do you want to do to make PlayStation 4 and Xbox One users, who I believe are the majority of our players, feel more satisfied with the game? Because I think, hold on, the background's disappeared again. I think it's safe to say that they've had a bit of a tough time of things this year, and not just the PlayStation 4 and Xbox, but also PlayStation 5 have had a horrendous time. And even the Xbox Series X people had difficulties with the texture glitching. It seems that I think PC are probably the only ones that haven't been dreadfully impacted this year.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. We've got sections separately for the Xbox and the PlayStation 5 in particular. So I won't duplicate those now. But in terms of the Gen 8 console owners, the PS4, PS4 Pro, Xbox One, Xbox One X, um, it's it's about paying more attention to. If I'm honest, I think we've taken our eye off the ball of the Gen 8 experience.
Yep.
In terms of, there's been an excitement to be able to deliver so much more on Gen 9,
Yep.
on PS5 and the Xbox Series X, that it's been less than ideal, I think, on the Gen 8 front. Frame rate, for example, on in Victoria. So
the sound issues on Xbox.
sound issues on Xbox are a long-standing thorn in everybody's side, unfortunately. Is we definitely need to be finding a way to resolve that. But that one is a big, complex, scary issue that we do have some thoughts about how we can do, but there's also going to need to be a massive amount of testing that we need to get right on that, because it potentially will introduce a ton of problems. So we need to make sure it doesn't. But in terms of the things that we can sort of immediately, probably shouldn't have gone wrong, there's that. There's the performance side of it, and there's the robustness side of it. And for me, it's about getting Gen 8 experience back to an acceptable frame rate. And reliability. So you're not going to get a full experience, a Gen 9 and a PC experience on a Gen 8 console. It's kind of been Gen 8 led the way to some extent. Well, Gen 9 are kind of leading the way now, and PC are kind of leading the way. And that's not to say that Gen 8 is getting left behind. We're still putting a lot of effort. If anything, we have to put more effort into the Gen 8 stuff to get it to deliver and be more efficient to what it does.
Well, if I remember correctly, the majority of our console players are still on Gen 8. So it's don't get me wrong, there's still a fair amount on Gen 9, but the majority are still on Gen 8. So it would be unwise for us to keep letting them have a poor player experience.
No, totally. So this is where we need to be to getting a handle on that, getting that better and more reliable. But that doesn't necessarily mean getting all of the layers that the Gen 9 consoles have got, because they got more memory to play with. So unless someone suddenly installs a lot more memory into the Gen 8 consoles, or we manage to find miraculous memory improvements, then realistically the extra layers are probably not going to suddenly turn up. But what you do have should play well.
So I think what we've done in the past has been where we've tried to put everything out exactly the same on all three platforms, where it was, let's say, Xbox, PlayStation, PC. And is that changing now? So perhaps, I think the Sherman Hill is a good example of where PC, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X were able to have 100 coaches? Wagons, sorry. I knew it was wrong as I said it. We're able to have 100 wagons, but the Generation 8 consoles weren't, and so that meant that they had a more stable freight cars. It's actually freight cars. There we go. And they were able to have a more stable player experience. Is this something you're going to be more aware of from now on? Because I think Rush Hour in particular is where console users really struggled.
Yeah, and it's because, like I said, and we did do different timetables on the different platforms, so that we could have more detailed service layers on the Gen 9 than we did on the Gen 8. Where things went wrong on for Rush Hour really wasn't as much about the timetables, actually, although, excuse me, in some cases it didn't help. It's actually more, some of the detail of the stations, and some of the things that have been going on there meant that they just ran very poorly. So Victoria runs very poorly because of everything going on in that area. So really, that's what needs to be improved, and that's not really affected as much by the service layers because that's already been cut back as far as it can be cut back anyway. So it's it's finding, why is it wrong? A low frame rate can be for any one of a number of different reasons, and we need to make sure that all of the all of those things are looked into. Now, Alex, one of our guys on the engineering team, has been spending quite a lot of time. One of the things that actually went out, I think that's gone out now in the last update, was they'd managed to, between Alex and Will, they found a memory improvement that's in something to the tune of 100 megabytes of RAM per, which was across the board.
What would that improve?
100 megabytes of RAM makes the difference in a lot of cases between crashing and not crashing.
Okay.
It's that's quite a considerable memory saving. Actually, it's quite impressive to find. This is not a lot of cases with memory optimization at this point in a project. You're nipping and tucking, saving megabyte, 2 megabytes, and so forth here and there. To be able to find 100 megs you can isolate and throw away is because basically there's a feature in Unreal related to tessellation which we're not using at all. And so by turning it off, essentially, it just frees up all the memory that it was using. I'm sure I've oversimplified the amount of work that it took to do, but so they were able to do that, and that will help every platform. So
I mean that's obviously one part of it. I think it is on the roadmap as well that you're looking at memory optimization, which would help with the crashes that some people are experiencing. But let's use Rush Hour again as an example here. What is being done to help their performance? Because there are still a lot of people still having a lot of problems. Like what are we doing now? Because obviously we've identified it's a problem. What steps are being taken to fix it?
So they're continuing to do work. So that's one of the reasons this extra 100 megabytes was identified. That was part of that process.
Yeah.
So we're still continuing to dig into reports of crashes on the different platforms, identify why those platforms are crashing. Apologies, my friend.
No, that's fine.
Work out why those platforms are crashing, and then what we can do. And if it's memory, then yes, we can improve that. But if it's something else, like for example the platformer problem at Brighton, in the case of the crash when you arrived there on the Gatwick Express train, that wasn't a crash. Due to memory. Sorry, it wasn't a crash. It was a crash, but it wasn't due to memory. So you can't just assume everything is memory related. And sometimes I think we've made this assumption that these things are memory related.
Yeah.
But actually, when we've dug into them, they've not. They've been something else.
When they are something else, does that still mean that they are? It's because of the capabilities of the machine. Or is it because we've made a mistake?
It'll be a good old-fashioned bug.
It'll be a good old-fashioned bug.
In most cases, it'll be a good old-fashioned bug. It could be a bug because of that machine doing something differently, and that's where the variation in behaviour has come from. But it's difficult to. Witchcraft is a significant factor. Yes, baby kid. That sums it up nicely. It's there's a lot of different causes, and basically what the team have been doing is going into each of the crashes and figuring them out and trying to reproduce it, capture it, figure out what they can do about it. And it either goes on this is just we need to wind more memory button, or it's one of the other things, and those generally are easier to fix because they're generally a bug and you can go and find that bug, whereas finding the infinite pool of memory that we need desperately looking for is a bit more tricky, but they found a big chunk recently, so I'm quite happy about that. I think it's why following that update a number of people are saying that they're finding routes more stable.
I think some people are but there are still reports where I think it's Dresden is a particularly big one where people are reporting crashes still. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. I mean, I'm interested to sort of get a collation of feedback from the community, sort of into the team for following the change that was sent out to players before Christmas. Let's get the feedback of what they've been experiencing over Christmas, and then the engineering team will use that as kind of like their next run into to looking at things and working out, because there's still problems then. Or things haven't improved. It may be actually there's another underlying issue there that needs to be looked into.
Yeah. Now, obviously, we touched slightly on when we would delay a route and what would constitute a reason to delay a route, but there is just a direct question on the forums, which is there a chance that you could delay releasing a route if it's not up to scratch? That's a yes, isn't it?
It's always a possibility, but the how possible it is what varies. So some release dates are set in concrete. There's just nothing we can do about that, and there's all sorts of reasons why that is.
Yep.
But some dates are and some dates have more wiggle room in them, and if we need to, we'll use that wiggle room. We go through a review process, and we want to review that review process so that we're a bit more strict with it as well. As Gareth says, West Cornwall was delayed. There was wiggle room on that release date. We held the release and put some extra fixes in it. So, and I think it's better because of that. It's so yeah, where we can, we will.
Yep. Let's see. If you admit the upcoming projects get announced too early, why do you keep announcing them too early?
I don't think we have lately, have we? If we've been close, anything.
I think we kind of
other side of things going the other way now.
We definitely made mistakes in that area this year. There's no denying that. But I think we definitely learn our lesson with the rush hour, because we did announce that before we should have, really, in hindsight. So it's something that we are definitely aware of, because we don't want to go promising you something and then taking it back. That sucks for everyone.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we're learning from it, and hopefully we won't do it again, she says. Right, will DTG start prioritizing fixes to make the game more stable and help DTG to release more? I think we've answered that one.
So
yeah. Once a DLC gets released and report issues on it, why does it take so long to progress through bug fixes? Some we see happening months down the line, many we see that have yet to be acknowledged. Is it possible to focus all the attention on making sure each DLC is released at top notch for current and future customers? Okay.
Well, that's the goal. That's
the goal.
That's what we want to get to. So one of the things I mentioned earlier on right at the beginning of the stream really was that we want to get better at spotting the issues, because we're missing issues that shouldn't be missed, like the change that went out, then all the speed limits vanished. And once we've found an issue, we're quite good at getting it fixed, but then there's a problem with getting the fix out.
Can we talk about some of the more long-lasting issues here as well, which I think this person might have been referring to as well? So, like, for example, a perfect example of one I know is the save game issue, where there is a lot of instances where if someone saves their game, the game has a right strop when they come back to it.
Bluntly and honestly, save game just doesn't work. It's that the save game issue is not just a simple one thing doesn't work. It's not just fix save game. Unfortunately, save game problem is a death of a million paper cuts type problem. There's a lot of different things there, and it is one of the things that I'll be bringing back to the table again when I get back, and saying we need to get this fixed, because there's so many issues that I see where people are saying, oh yeah, I've got red lights, or I've got this problem, or I'm stuck here. And in almost all cases, it's yes, I resumed a save game.
Yep. No, I've seen it. I've seen it countless of times on the forums.
It's not that the content is broken; it's that the resuming a save game isn't working.
Yep. I mean, the amount of times forum threads have come up and someone's gone, I don't understand why this signal won't change. What is going on? And the following question will be, did you resume a saved game? And they will be like, yes, I did.
Yeah. So. I know some of the team have started looking into some of the issues related to it. Sometimes it's as simple as every control that you want to be restored has to have a tick box set. And my argument to the team is, why is that not the default? Yeah. I know why. It means the save games would be a bit bigger, and then they'd work. So there's some big discussions to be had there. I'm totally on your side about it. If the feature's there, it needs to work, or it needs to go
this
away.
is it. Yeah, but this is literally just taking the words out of my mouth. Why have we still got it if it's not going to work? And also, the appeal to have it is for someone like myself, for example. If you look at some of the scenarios, or if you look at some of the services, they can be upwards of an hour and a half to 2 hours. Some of them, depending on what route you're doing and which timetable service you've selected. Now, to have 2 hours to sit down and play consecutively is a long time to expect people to be able to stay and concentrate at their computers, their consoles, whatever, without being distracted. And it would, the feature itself, to be able to save it and go back to it, I don't think it's really an unreasonable request.
No. It's a completely reasonable request for it to be there, but it's no use having a trick save that doesn't actually work. So leave that one with me.
I will leave that one with you.
It's one of those ones that's been paining me for a while now. So
it's been
make it not pain.
I was going to say, hasn't this been years in the making, this issue?
Yeah, it has.
Yeah. All right. Let's go with what is the biggest thing that came to Train Sim World 2 this year you thought went down well? I think we talked about that. What is the thing you think didn't?
The thing that hasn't gone as well as I would have liked, for various reasons in and out of our control, is Generation 9 consoles.
Yeah.
Because PlayStation have had issue after issue. Because PlayStation 5, it didn't deploy properly, from what I remember rightly, because there was an error on Sony end when it didn't work.
Yes.
And then just after they got it fixed, I think that was when the system update came out that then took away applied the 64 gig DLC limit.
Yep.
Then we've hit this achievement limit. It's just a limit after limit after limit for a no limits platform. It's been driving up sort of the wall a bit. Cause it's a shame because it's such a good console.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got on the Series X, we've had that blasted texture glitching problem which just came out of nowhere.
Yep.
I think Series S hasn't been having the greatest time of it either, because I think they've been having some more of the stability issues on there. So it's just like, when those platforms work, they are probably some of the best places to play Train Sim World, but they've just had so many issues which have just marred that experience. That is just for me, that's probably one of the bigger disappointments, because I got my Series X sitting here, and it's my preferred way of playing the game, and has been since I got it. But it's been so far from perfect because of these other problems that I've been having, which have been sad.
I have a question about the limits. How come we didn't spot those sooner before it became a problem? Was Sony not forthcoming with that information, or did we just miss it?
We missed it. It's one of those things that it's in a document that is inside a big document, inside a bunch of stuff, and it's easy to miss. For such a, I think Sony didn't specifically call it out because 99.999999% of games doesn't even apply to.
Yep.
Because they're just so far below those limits. It's just silly. So it's not like they've got like what would have been nice is a call out section on the front. Here are the highlights that are going to really hit you. But obviously, for most people, that's not the case. For most devs, that's just not the case. So it's in the big list, and it was missed when the documentation was reviewed for it. We deployed on PS5, and it was all working on PS5 with these limits supposedly in place anyway, until they didn't get enforced until later on.
Right.
And I think that one of the problems that we're having now that we're testing with this in mind. Is I think how we test on PS5 test kits doesn't enforce that limit or something. And if we have a PS5 and we throw all of the content on it, it all works.
So you're having to remove some of the content to make it test accurately to what a player would experience.
Well, no, it's like now we know of the limit. It's easy. We can just avoid that limit. The console tells us how much room we're using, and we can make sure that it's that. But the reason it wasn't found beforehand, I think, is just because I think that in the test environment, I don't think that gets applied. Mm-hmm. And there are good reasons, I'm sure, why that would be the case. But it's another little thing to trip on, But it was in the documentation that these limits were being enforced at some point, and it was missed, unfortunately. So
that's one of the things you didn't like. What did you like?
So I just want to answer Kickback Man says, why not test on user-owned hardware? Oh. You can't. Yeah. You can only test on dev kits. You can only test on the official Sony test kits, because you can't upload your own software onto and test on user-owned hardware. We have got retail kits, but by the time we can test it on a retail kit, everybody's already fallen over and having problems, so it's already been deployed and it's live. What we want is a solution where we can find these things in future before it goes live, which means you can't use retail kits because they can't get this content. But that's why. Sorry, what was your other question?
What did you like?
What did I like? Lots of stuff. I mean, crikey, the content we put out. We got London Brighton in Train Sim World. I mean, that's fantastic. It's been a route that I've enjoyed since MSTS, Train Sim 1. It's been every major train sim. Even Southern Belle by Houston Consultants on the Sinclair Spectrum had London to Brighton in it. So it's one of those things that's just been fantastic to get on into the game, and it's come in so well. It's such an enjoyable experience. Sherman Hill has, for me, delivered the proper American heavy freight experience, that as you crest the top of the hill and switch over into braking, and then you start braking and managing the train going down the hill, it's just like that's delivering a really good American freight experience. Now there's always room to improve these things, but yes, black format, the 100 freight coaches, yes. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then obviously you got Dresden, which is just by far and away my favourite German route. It's great. There's been some really tremendous releases lately, which I just find so much fun to play. And more to come, because I tell you what, Dresden Chemnitz is incredibly fun.
You're just teasing now. So, can we talk UI? Because I think the updated UI has been a bit... Some people like it, some people don't. I think there's a lot of feedback for what people aren't enjoying on it. What are our plans to take on board this feedback, where the players have explained what they don't like about it, and it's quite unanimously agreed? So, for example, the new UI is messy in places, especially the route selection screen. Some people find it a challenge to get to what they want.
I get it. I don't think it's messy. But I get why people are finding it. It's finding it more difficult to find what they want on the route selection screen. I really like the new route selection screen. I imagine it's a bit like a lot of UI things. It's a Marmite feature.
Yeah.
And I personally really like it, but I get other people want a big grid, and that personally just it might as well be a grey box. But I get a grid would allow you to see a lot more things and find the one that you want more quickly. So it's we are gonna pass that on to the UI design team, and we're gonna see what we can do.
I think there's definitely a call out for more ability to customize it slightly. So give yourself options of what you'd like to see. So you obviously like the slidey way, perhaps give other people a different option.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, and again, I'm not making promises about how things might happen.
Yes, no promises.
I could foresee having the ability to toggle between the current option and the big flat boring grid. Yes, I'm being a bit facetious, but
the big flat boring grid.
The big flat grid, where you can see lots of stuff, but maybe it's not as not as pretty. Or a list. There's all sorts of things there. The problem with having lots of different options is that each of those boxes have art on them, and so you end up making it to where you have multiple bits of art for all the different ways that you could possibly have a menu, which seems like a ridiculous waste of time to create all these things. So it's my list would work all okay, Red Leader, on consoles as well, as I think if it was done right. But this is something for the UI design team to look into. I definitely heard the feedback on the route selection screen, and we'll see what we can do with it. The diorama is the other hot topic.
Yeah.
We wanted to do something different, and I think we did something different, and not everyone liked it.
Yeah.
Some people did. I like it, but I get why people don't like it, because you can't see the weather as well, and you can't see it raining, and so on and so forth. I
think it's also because it's facing you're looking at it right at the front, aren't you?
Yeah, so you're not looking at it at the side as
well.
I
believe that is particularly irksome for our users that make their own customized liveries as well, because they can't see what it'll look like.
Yeah, totally. So that again is another thing that we're going to look at, and I would expect that probably would change at some point. I mean, that's clearly something that's wrong. Yeah. And the weather selection thing, Jason mentioned that earlier on. That's a bug that just needs fixing. The bit where you use the D-pad on the consoles and you can't see which of the sliders is currently highlighted. That just needs fixing.
Yeah. And then, are you going to address the statement of it's more like a game than a simulator? Are you planning on increasing the functionality in the trains themselves? Are there any plans of introducing any features to the simulation, like guard mode or AI guard, like in TGV?
I'll challenge the statement first. I don't think it's more of a game than a simulator. I think the premise there is wrong. There's an awful lot of simulator in this. But what makes a game versus a simulator is such a personal thing. These trains are incredibly functional. There's a lot of detail in them. That's not to say there can't be more. Now, I know that one of the things that has upset people a lot is the train distance counters lacking in the SD70 ACE on Sherman Hill. That wasn't a conscious design decision. It was more of a time-oriented decision. There were a lot of other things that took up the time, and that ran out of time as a feature to go in. Is that the trend going forward? No, totally not. It's. I'm not sure the distance counter worked properly in St. Patch Grade, if I remember rightly. I think someone told me it counted in the wrong units or something. Right. But it's still, it needs to be there and it needs to work. But I'd rather be putting on the side of putting more stuff in, rather than on the side of putting less stuff in. So I honestly, I would enjoy a spirited discussion on the forums about why people think it's a game and not a simulator, because I don't share that view. Now, when I have had discussions with it in the past, it's involved the lack of head bounce. Okay, that's done. We implemented head bounce. It's people have said because the routes are too short, and I would argue that doesn't make the difference between an arcade and a simulator.
You use the word arcade. Now, that word gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
It certainly wouldn't be considered an arcade game. But how realistic is it? How realistic is it is a game, but how realistic is it to real life? Because obviously we try to be pretty accurate. We don't always get it 100% spot on.
We'll never be 100% spot on. Let's just be completely upfront about that.
Sure.
This is an home entertainment simulation, and fundamentally it's a video game.
Yep.
It is in the category of video games, but it's is it realistic? I can't tell you if it's realistic. I've never driven a train, but I speak to a lot of people who tell me it's pretty realistic. Now, again, there are elements of it which can be improved, but yeah, it's the generalization of this is not a simulator, it's a game, that is what I would like to have the spirited discussion on, because I want to understand that, because I'm sure there'll be some interesting learnings there, so that we can bring it forward. But yeah, it boggles my mind, if I'm honest.
I think as well, sometimes I think we've had this discussion before, Matt, where we've wanted to make it more inviting for new people to try, and often in order to get people engrossed in it, you need to make it perhaps a little bit easier for them to digest how to use, because it can be hard. I can say from experience that when I first started, I really struggled to get the trains moving full stop, which can be incredibly frustrating. But we have all sorts of train enthusiasts out there that perhaps love trains but just have no idea how to drive them. And I think once you start to go into the area of making it easier, that's when it can also start to be categorized as a game over a simulator. Is that something you'd like to work on, perhaps navigating how welcoming it is to new people?
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the things that I see new players bounce off the game because they get stuck.
Yep.
And I know that it's something that Sam has started looking into as well. In fact, Sam did a lot of the work originally that got us to where we are now, which is a lot better place than we were before originally when it launched. But I think we need another option, another pass over it, because this is not about more advanced tutorials. This is not about safety systems and things. This is people who still can't get the train moving. It's we're talking back to basics. And helping people play the game, but without dumbing it down. That's the key thing for me. Is at no point, have we ever made the trains artificially easy to drive. They are the way they are supposed to be driven.
Yep.
What we try and do is provide the tutorial to help you get the basics of it. Now, where things become not real is that you can drive without the safety systems on if you want to do that. There's things like scoring components where you can turn scoring off, or you can just ignore it, and so on and so forth. So it's it's getting a better pass on helping people get into the game and get more success out of playing the game would be a big step forward.
And actually, while we're talking about people's first look at the game, and the chat have rightfully mentioned it, manuals. Where are we with manuals? Because obviously I think we've talked a few times now about how we wanted to improve manuals. But the other thing I was actually just thinking about then, because we were talking about making it easier, is if you're a child and you love trains and you want to play a train sim, you can't expect a kid to read a manual to learn how to drive a train on a game, or a simulator in this case. So yeah, where are we with those?
most of the kids I've seen play the game figure it out faster than the adults.
Yeah,
to
I
be
know.
honest.
I was at a convention.
So let's focus on the adults that can't figure it out. People like myself, when I look at this, train when the setup team give me a train for the first time, and I'm looking at, I just can't make it move. I'm like, this is broken.
Yeah.
No, you've just not done this. Oh, okay, fine. It's not me. Okay, it's me then. Fine, fair enough. And yeah, I think that the one of the things that I'd like to think about in the future, again, not saying there's any kind of a concrete plan towards this, is I think there is an interest for people who have a very casual interest in trains without necessarily wanting to get into the detail of how they work.
Yep.
I want to see trains moving around, and they want the operations of moving trains around without the detail of what a brake pipe and all the rest of it is, because you do start to have to get quite a bit of knowledge to really get the most out of an American freight train, for example. You kind of need to know a bit more detail about how the air brake system works.
Yep.
And that's quite complex stuff. If you want to answer the question, why isn't my train moving? Why is my wheels just spinning at the front of the train? Well, you need to understand how the brake systems work, and then it'll be obvious why it's not moving. So to that end, I think one of the things that'd be really interesting to explore is the possibility of like a simple controls thing, so that you can just effectively tell it how fast you want it to go, and then let the computer drive it for you, essentially, like a cruise control of some sort, with slightly simplified physics on it. But I don't know. I'm kind of making stuff up on the fly here. But I think there is a group of players that might appreciate an easier way in.
I know I would have.
Use the AI physics with simple controls, Joy. Something like that, I think, is probably what you'd do. But it would be, it'd be interesting to see. But it would need a lot of exploration. But this is in no way to get, as a count to the way it works at the moment. The way it works at the moment is the realistic way. So that, and then this is about how do we provide a way that also helps people get on board, and then provide tutorials and things so that we can get them off of using that and driving them properly, and probably having more fun doing so as soon as possible.
There's never going to be a perfect way to introduce people into this particular hobby. I don't think it's so complex, and what works for one person might not work for another. Like, for example, I'm a learn by doing, so yes, I made lots of mistakes while doing the learning to drive the trains, but we got there eventually. Whereas some people digest things through written documentation, other people watch videos. There's lots of different methods, but we haven't forgotten about the manuals, have we? Because obviously I think that's been on the roadmap for a while now.
They haven't, and again, it's on the list that I've been putting together over the break that I want to check in on with the publishing team, because they've been looking after manuals now for a while, and work out have we made any progress on terms of the manuals, and what I can do to help in that front, in terms of whether or not we need to get a technical author or something to look at those things.
Yeah. Actually, what. I've just looked at a question from the forums, which is kind of perfect with this topic. Do you think Train Sim World 2 fails or succeeds in attracting hardcore train fans or hardcore simmers?
I think it succeeds.
I'd say it succeeds.
I think it succeeds. I think that I think it depends on, as with all of these, as with anything, does it have the train I want to drive? Does it have the route I want to drive it on? If you're interested in a train that doesn't exist, you want to drive a Pacer. It's the greatest train in the world, clearly. And you want to drive a Pacer up in the north, then TSW has not got anything for you. So it's not going to attract you in that instance, no matter how enthusiastic you are. But if you're generally more interested in trains, or if the trains that you want to drive, like Class 101s or Class 375s or whatever, are in the game, then I mean, why wouldn't it? It's a fairly authentic recreation of the driving those things, one-to-one recreation of the routes in and around. It's I get a lot of really positive feedback from people. In fact, I was just talking to someone just recently who's is a Metro North driver, and just seen screenshots of TSW for the first time, and well, the expletives were real. In a positive way, he couldn't believe that this sort of thing existed on games consoles and on PCs, and that, as a game that I think there's a lot there for people.
Kalidor's actually just said the level of details people complain about is pretty hardcore. Now, I agree that it can definitely seem that way. I was definitely shocked at how particular everybody is, what they want to see, what the community will accept and what they won't. So, I'm going to use it. I know it's a hot topic, but I'm going to use the Dostos as an example here. The community reaction to the incorrect Dostos was huge, and for the casual player, you would have no idea why the community were complaining. You wouldn't. If you didn't know much about trains, you wouldn't understand what was going on. But the players demonstrated quite clearly there how they felt, what type of things they're not willing to tolerate, why they didn't like it, and I think that's happened more than once when we've made, or when we've delivered inaccuracies with perhaps our routes or locos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, can we talk third party?
We can talk third party.
Okay. We've still got so many questions. We're now seeing more third parties releasing DLC for the game. What are the requirements for becoming a third party developer? Do they need, for example, a portfolio of stuff made in Train Sim 1, or can anyone get in contact and be taken on board?
No, they don't need a portfolio of stuff on TS1. This process is going to get easier over time. There is a bit of a bump at the minute because the way to get access for third parties to get access to our editor is really awkward at the moment, for us and for them. Very slow, time consuming, and actually it's a little bit expensive on our side. It doesn't cost the third parties anything, but because of the way we have to do it, it's just really a pain. So we're gradually increasing the third party roster. There's a few more that aren't particularly well known at the moment that have come on board as well. So it is a growing roster. No, it's essentially when we're in a position, in a better position to sort of throw the gates open on the third party, which should happen this year. Then it'll be a contact email address. You'll tell us what you want to work on, and you'll get on with it.
Excellent.
It should be a relatively straightforward process. We want to be able to invite, get as many people working on third-party content as possible. We don't want to put any roadblocks in the way there. Yeah. And then the idea would be that all the third parties will talk to each other, not necessarily, opening the doors completely, because sometimes people like to sort of keep themselves to themselves. But then maybe they can find out how they can help each other. They can find out how they can complement each other. So I'm making this route. Oh, I'll make a loco that goes on that route then. So it's there's ways that third parties can work well together. When I joined Dovetail, I was head of third party, and built the original third party side of things in the company. So I'm kind of now that's actually come back to dev, and Adam is looking after it. Then I'm going to be looking to see the third party side of things develop as quickly as possible.
I was going to say, you say as quickly as possible. Is this something that we can realistically expect next year?
In this coming year, I would want to see things.
I would want to. Are we going to?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to that one. You've yesed it. You heard him, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to. It's you can't keep saying yes, third party, and then continuing to make it difficult for third party. Not that we're trying to make it difficult; it just is difficult. But we need more third party developers, and I am always a big believer that a broad community of developers are what bring the originality and the richness to the wider product.
And obviously, you mentioned Adam is working closely with our third-party team now. Can we talk about our relationships with our third-party developers and how that's changing, and what we're going to be doing to update content going forward? So one of the questions we've been asked is, will we see a fix for the DBBR 187 and the sound on it? And that has been asked multiple times in the chat tonight. Is this something that we're going to be following up with now? Is this something Adam's going to be following up with? So if there are, I think Rivet recently updated the Arosa line to improve their timetable because that was incorrect. Can we expect more updates like this?
Yeah, I would hope so. I'm not in control of third-party development schedules, but so there's two things. We want to be more supportive of developers during the initial release, to getting them to a place where they're not releasing at that level in the first place, and then working with them to try and get to help them really to work out, what is it that what information can we help, what knowledge can we provide, what guidance can we provide based on how we know a community will react to something, and then help and support them so that they can understand the importance of some of these things, and then in certain circumstances be really quite strong in terms of these things need fixing, like the BR187 needs a slew of fixes. So and I know some of those are in progress. What I haven't had is an update on how that's doing, and when are we going to see that materialize into an actual release.
Because this is something I think the players have always struggled with, is who do they tell if there's a problem with, let's say, one of Rivet's products, for example. Do they go on the Rivet forums and tell Rivet, I found this problem, and then it is Rivet's responsibility to look into it? Or do they go on the DTG forums and tell us, and then we tell Rivet to go and look into it? Where the best place in my opinion would be to, if you are experiencing any problems with any third party route, post it on our forums, and we will make sure that the developer sees it.
Yeah, I would rather the issues came to us, and then we can. I mean, the third-party developers have access to our forums. They can see what you're saying, and if stuff gets raised via our support ticket system, then we collate that and send it to them. And that's one of the things that we can help with as a publisher, working with third parties, is we take some of that support burden so they can focus on making great content. So it's but then it means that we've got visibility of the issues that are affecting you. No, don't by all means also report it directly to. I'm not so saying you don't also report it to the third party, because I'm sure they would appreciate the direct feedback as well. But it's really useful for us to see that feedback so that we get a good picture of how they're doing, and what's important, so that we can go and apply our own feedback to those issues as well.
And it was recently announced that we will be working with Just Trains, and one of the questions followed up that announce is, with Just Trains starting to make content for Train Sim World 2, could we possibly see more third-party developers making stuff for Train Sim World 2? Are we talking with any more third-party developers? You don't have to say who, but are conversations being had?
There's conversations being had. I think there's been conversations with Just Trains for a while now, and it's more a question of lining up with their own schedules and with other dev schedules. So, with some of the TS1 developers at the moment, they're getting everything they want from TS1, and it's the product and environment that they're familiar with. So, it may be some time before they choose to move over to TSW, and they'll be welcome when they do.
Yep.
It's we certainly want to see more, as I've said, because each third party brings their own unique style and interest, not just in how they make the content, but the kinds of content that they make as well. So it's Jason, I've got no idea what Just Trains are working on. I imagine I think they are just literally starting to learn the tools. So I wouldn't imagine they even have a project yet.
When we have more to share, we will.
Yes, and to be honest, it's always a little bit tricky with third-party side of things, because people ask us what are they doing, what they're doing. The third party will announce that when they're ready. Their project.
I mean, yeah, usually it involves a lot of emails before they share anything, and then we all agree. But yes, you'll know. Let's put it that way. You'll know when you know. Right. Licensing. Have there been any companies that have refused to let Dovetail Games use their licenses?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard a story once where we got very close and then someone
We've
pulled
got
out.
close in a number of different occasions. There's been I'm not going to name any names,
No,
but
don't.
there's been a UK preserved railway we got almost across the line with, and then it all fell apart. There's a couple of railroads in America. And there's all sorts of different reasons.
I was going to say, because the follow-up question is, what are the difficulties in getting these licenses? So where do we struggle? Not struggle, but what could cause someone to say no?
Sometimes it's legal. It's lost in the legal terminology of something that the issue with the Preserve Railway in the UK was just down to what we needed them to do, or to say we could do, versus what they felt they could do, and the lawyer wasn't happy with that mix, and therefore it didn't go any further. And I never quite understood why, but there it is. The lawyer says no, then it's no. In a lot of cases, a common one that comes up is actually, with the arcade versus sim discussion previously, a lot of the railways are concerned about security, about the fact that our trains are quite scarily close to their real things. And does that mean that people will, feel that they are now qualified to drive their trains and run off with them? Things like that. Or the game looks quite accurate, as well, which means that they see videos and screenshots of unfortunate things happening with trains being upside down or on their sides, and all sorts of fun stuff. And that's bad PR for them. That's... You talk about, surely it'll be a great thing for to get their name in the game, but then if people start sharing screenshots of these kinds of things happening, that's bad for them, and so it kind of gets to in a lot of cases, law and licensing is more about what's the risk of something. And if you owned a property, let's say you own a license, and I say I want to do stuff with it, you lose nothing by saying no.
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas you take risk on if you say yes, and that's kind of that whole is that back and forth. Now sometimes these companies can see lots of opportunity. They see being actually this is a really cool thing, or they've got a built-up legal side of things because they've maybe done a lot with model railways and so forth, to where this is just something that they turn the handle on, they already know and manage, and sometimes they don't, and in which case it becomes very difficult. So it is not obvious in a lot of cases. Sometimes it's unexpected. Sometimes it's been, big companies have said, they were all up for that, and little companies have said, no. Whereas sometimes you're thinking the big companies traditionally the one that's difficult to get to do things. So it's completely unpredictable, and all you can do is go in, ask the question, present it, answer their questions, and just see how it goes out.
I am constantly amazed by how amazing our licensing team actually are. They are so incredible.
They're really good. They're really, really good. I mean, it's some of the stuff that they've been able, the licenses they've been able to get, some of the back and forth that's gone on, in order to get those licenses has been really, it's. That team work hard. There's 3 people in that team, although they look after contracts with other companies as well. But part of their role is the licensing side of things, and they work ridiculously hard on getting the licenses, because obviously they do the licenses for fishing as well, for Bassmaster, that's it works really well as a process, and it's not always going to work in our favour, and that's fine. Quite often what you find is you can go back a year, 2 years later, and the world has changed. One company we spoke to said we're a completely firm no, and then we started deploy, and that was in Train Simulator days, but now Train Sim World is on console. They're much more open to the discussion. Literally, the fact that we're on a console has made it to where they're open to a discussion now.
Which is amazing.
Who would predict that?
One of the questions I've seen asked quite a few times now, and I think this has been a concern for players, is will Great British Railways affect the future of Train Sim World in any way?
I'm not aware of any way that it will. I'm assuming that the question is a licensing one. I put it in the licensing section.
Yeah, well, it's because they've taken over Southeastern.
But that's all based on, it's all DFT, and we've got a really good relationship with the Department of Transport, and a growing number of licenses that we manage through the DFT. So we're not foreseeing any issue there at all, to be honest. In fact, if the fact that it rolls into a DFT agreement, if anything, makes life easier, just because of like I said, they're really great to work with.
And on the topic of licensing, this one's a bit of a tough one. So, whose decision was it to release the share liveries and charge people for doing so, but only heavily censored content? It's totally unnecessary, and licenses are not affected, even though I expect you're going to say they are. And then on top of this, are you going to charge for it? And the last part I'm not going to mention.
So yes, they are. Licensing is affected. When you have a license. So one of the things I've seen, one of the comments I've seen is, surely at least make it work with the licenses you've got, like CSX and DB and Amtrak and the like. Well, actually, if anything, they're the hardest ones to make it work with, because we've got specific contracts that says anything we release must go through their official approval processes, and they will provide feedback on it, then cycle round, and then once it's approved, then it can be released. So having a license doesn't mean you have carte blanche to do whatever you like with their brand. You're still very much controlled. So the stuff that we have got licensed, the brands we have got licenses for, are still heavily controlled in that respect. The brands that we don't have a license for, well, we don't have a license for them. Copyright is still copyright. So you'll say, I guess, I've seen so many different arguments about this related. For example, other racing games, for example, where they've got livery sharing systems that don't appear to have this problem. And for one thing, I don't know how they've set it up. I've not been in the background, in the room of how they set these. They may just have decided we've got millions of lawyers and therefore it doesn't matter. We'll deal with it when it comes. They may have set up all of these agreements in advance. I can't say how all you can see is, as an end user, how it works, and you don't know what the engine is, effectively what the mechanic is that they've set up in the background legally to make sure that they're in a good place to be able to support that. So all I can do is talk about it from our perspective and what I know and what we see in the contracts that we've got. And let's say, for example, that one of the big operators that we have a license with, let's say, for example, someone uploaded a bunch of reskins, or people uploaded reskins, that operator decided, hang on, but you're not following the license here, we withdraw the license, and then you can no longer have those licenses at all in the game period.
Now,
is that worth
you say that is entirely why we've currently set up the restrictions we have. So, and this is very much a case of, for those of you who are using this feature over the holidays, before Creators Club is available, we've put on the strictest restrictions that we know you're safe to use at this current time.
Yeah.
Now, they could change. They also equally could stay exactly as they are. But we will update you with any of that as and when we get more information. But as it stands, that is, let's say it's a worst case scenario that we've given you when it comes to those restrictions. That is your safest bet.
Yeah, and if you're doing liveries that comply with those, you'll be able to upload them and share them, and all will be good. So it's just one more example with another brand of a very famous brown soda that everyone knows. When we did a route, a long time ago, I did a route with somebody on MSTS, and this was a 1930s Steam era route on Microsoft Train Sim, and out in the hills, somewhere in a field 2 miles from the track, there was a billboard advertising this fizzy beverage. They received a cease and desist from that company. It's the law is a thing.
Yeah. Mostly, we don't want you to be creating these wonderful liveries and then having your time wasted, because that would be rubbish.
Yeah. Yes. Now we are, I think the discussions are ongoing.
Yeah, they're being had, but it is worth mentioning. We can't promise that the rules will definitely change, it's assume they will stay as they are and be pleasantly surprised if they don't.
Yep, that is absolutely the safest approach to take.
Yeah. Now, can we talk a bit more about Creators Club and modding while we're on this topic? First of all, what do you think of the modding tools available to PC players? And does it make you consider how some of these could be official so they can be used by console players?
I guess I'm puzzled about what this question is referring to in terms of the modding tools. Modding
tools, I'm assuming, based off of that question, is the things like the weather mods people create,
So part of the problem with for mods being available to be used on console players, they have to be built via our build servers against the appropriate developer kits for those particular consoles. So the way that most people are making mods, it just doesn't work for making the console version of the mod. It would have to go onto our system and then to be able to do that. And it becomes a bit more tricky then because on a PC you can just copy a pack file in and it's great. There's no such equivalent on a console. It would have to be delivered via effectively a DLC or by some other magic that would need to be figured out. And it's complicated to figure out. I have no idea how that would work for some of the mods. There's some really cool mods that people have been creating unofficially that you can download for PC, but I'm not sure how you would get those in any sort of sensible way in the console infrastructure.
Actually, while you're talking about the fact that they're not cross-platform, someone's asked an interesting question on this. They've gone, I'm not sure if Dovetail Games knows about the Unofficial editor.
Yeah, it's on the forum. People talk about it on the forum.
And they've gone, were you impressed by this? Is it something you don't want to exist, or did the devs look into it? Now, I distinctly remember having a conversation with you about this, Matt, and the exact way I phrased it was, Matt, have the players been a bit clever here? And you responded with, yes, they have.
Yes, they have. I'm very impressed with what I think it's Will and Train Sim ZZ primarily have been working on with the Unofficial editor, and it's quite. I am amazed at what the pair of them have been able to get up to in terms of what they're achieving on there. It's but that's the nature of any community, and modders will seek to build and dig and figure out what they're doing. So, I mean, the question is: it something you don't want to exist? No, it's it's if. I, unfortunately, the question's got a negative in it, which makes it very difficult to answer without sounding like I'm confirming that. But I am happy for anyone to do what they like. Essentially, it's and I'm it's kind of exciting seeing what other people are doing, as well. There is one modder who is now a third-party developer. For example, because of what they've been doing. So it's. It's not something we're going to support. It is not something that we are going to be. I'm going to be brutally honest. If we make an update and it breaks it, it breaks it.
Yep.
It's we're not going to hold ourselves back because of that. That's it's the hill you're climbing on your own, but not going to do anything to get in your way either. Not intentionally. But it's cool to see what people are doing, we learn a lot from the mods that are created and by what people are interested in. It's kind of like, okay, maybe we need to have a think about that. So like, for example, London Midland, some of his mods, we've been talking with him about, like, for example, his Sky mod and how we might bring that actually into the core game. There's I love talking with modders. Like I said earlier on, the product as a whole benefits from the breadth of a more broad community that are engaged in creating for it.
Can we talk about while we're talking about sort of modding and what's available for players to create themselves, the scenario designer, a lot of people feel like it doesn't have enough features. I know that we are working on a scenario designer 2.0, but an example is they can't adjust turnouts, they can't adjust paths, they can't adjust groupings, it can't currently be easily shared with players. The question
the easily shared with players should be fixed at some point. So.
Oh, yeah. Are there any further updates to plan to the scenario designer in the future? Well, there are, aren't there?
Well, we've got on the roadmap, I think, if they're still there or not, the Scenario Planner 2.0 and Livery Designer 2.0. Those are sort of nominal, and they'll be. We have ideas for what will go in each of them. I'm not going to outline those ideas because I don't know which of those will make it into the final cut. Speaking personally, Scenario Planner I think is what needs most effort. Livery Designer fundamentally does what it needs to do. It's got some areas that it needs to improve, like the number of layers you can use, for example, is limited at 300. But that's there because of a memory limit.
Yes.
So again, there would need to be a round of, can we optimize that performance memory limit, or do we make it to a Gen 9 and PC can have 1,000 layers, because in theory that should work fine. It might be that we've got other options we can do there, because of the way that the liveries work, that only applies in the editor. So if someone on, say, a Gen 9 PC made a 1,000 layer livery, then a Gen 8 PC should be able, a Gen 8 device should still be able to play that livery. So there's lots of options and discussions we can look at for Livery Designer 2.0, but Scenario Planner I think is the one that more in need of some functionality there. But we've got a big document of spec that we've written for what we know, all the options, and it's a matter of getting it actually into a plan to build now.
Let's talk Creators Club, because I think we spoke about it during the roadmap just before Christmas. But obviously there have been some follow-up questions from that, such as the content sharing tools is paid expansion. What is the reason for it being a paid for feature, and why is it bundled in with SPG, SKA, and the Bakerloo expansion? Shouldn't it be part of the core game?
So one of the reasons it's a paid expansion is because of the amount of work required to build it and also support it from a server infrastructure perspective. There's a lot more going on there. This is not just a game that you run on your own system. There's got to be a large supporting infrastructure that's massively bigger than Dovetail Live has currently been or needed to be. So there's one element to it. And why is it bundled? Well, it's kind of actually we were thinking that we kind of felt that the charge was there for Creators Club as I've outlined, but could we make it more, more interesting? Could we add some extra value to that pack? And that's where we thought, well, actually, could we create some extra stuff? Because effectively, when you enable Creators Club, when you buy Creators Club and it adds it to the core game, well, if we then add something to each of the core game things, it feels that the whole core game gets a bit bigger in that respect. Hence, it's an expansion pack. So that was when we thought, what can we do for each of the core routes? And hence why you've got the SD40 on Sand Patch Grade, the BR423 on Kolnak, and the Silver 72 stock on the Bakerloo line, along with a group of scenarios for them.
Yep. And while we're talking about Creators Club, this one is actually quite an easy one to answer. Regarding Creators Club and liveries for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, if I create a fictional livery and I've created it on the PlayStation 4 and update it to the Creators Club hub, would I then be able to download it via the hub onto my PlayStation 5, as it should be cross-platform?
Yes.
There you go.
Moving your liveries from your 4 to your 5 is a very good example of how you could do that.
Yep. Let's go into some more. Let's go. Oh my gosh, so many questions. Let's go into surveys. When will the next DTG survey be released? So that this person would like to vote on VR. But then there was another person asking, will there be another DTG survey coming out soon to see what core features the player base would really like to see in the game, such as multiplayer VR? And yeah, will there be another survey? The answer I've got, Sam has popped up to answer that one. There is no date at this time for any surveys. But he will do the list. There you go. Got an answer to that one. Let's go into the Ambassador Program in 2022. Can you add anyone from the console playing community to the DTG Ambassador Program? Absolutely. We currently have, I think it's 2 or 3 people that enjoy console, but we certainly don't restrict it to PC only. If you create content and it happens to be on a console, that's excellent. And if you think you know somebody that would be a good ambassador, feel free to ping me on the forums and I'll take a look. Right. Should we get through some more of these questions, Max? We've still got quite a lot.
Yeah, Jason's actually just off. For PlayStation players, there's a reason why liveries keep getting wiped. Yeah, I've been following the discussions on that on Facebook and the like recently, and it's on my list.
Okay, it's on your very large list at this point.
I've got a list of things that I've been thinking of over the holiday, and things that I want to follow up on and improve from all aspects of what we do. And a couple of, really losing work is just terrible. It's unacceptable. And what I suspect happening there is during the save process, it's crashing, and that just means it needs to be a better save process. So it might be difficult to find the crash, but you can at least make it so where it doesn't lose all the liveries. That's not rocket science. So it's on my list of things to chase up.
Why was Great Western Express ignored for so long, and how long do we have to wait to get it updated? And when will the Rail Driver update come? I'd love to buy more stuff in Train Sim World 2, but I'm not going to until I get Rail Driver support.
I believe that Adam has finished upgrading everything now to support Rail Driver. Mm-hmm. So this then will boil down to previous discussions about how we get those updates out to everybody. In terms of why is GW ignored for so long, it's not so much that it's ignored, it's that there's a queue of work and it takes time to get to things. I believe GWE is not far off of Adam's list now, actually. I've been hearing rumours that he's going to be looking at GWE's on the Class 166, the onboard destination destination blinds. So it's and the platform information system. So it's I don't think it's too long now before it gets the preservation crew wonder treatment. But Rail Driver support, like I said, is done across the board. We just need to get those out to everybody.
Yeah, there is currently a sticky forum thread that one of the community members made that has a really nice. It's really well formatted to keep track of what currently has Raildriver or not. What do you look for when adding a new route into the game?
All sorts of things. So we look and see what people have asked for. We look to see what types of things people have asked for. Factor in what kind of things have we made before and what we made recently. What are we lacking? And so it's kind of like for a long time, for a while there, we did lots of American passenger. We realised it had been a year since we'd done American freight, and now the pendulum swung the other way around, and we've done nothing but American freight and no passenger other than the Boston route. So it's it's kind of like trying to prevent that from happening. It's working well. So it's trying to keep the what's balanced. In terms of the stuff that's coming out, the trains that are there, look at what licenses we've got and work out if there's any that we've got but we've not used. Maybe we can try and bring some of those in. So there's and then obviously we look at the proposals. We then have to see if they fit in the timescales that we've got to build them, what trains they will need. Will it need two big complicated trains to make and we haven't got time to do that, in which case we might not be able to make it. Whereas another slot we might have the time to make two big complicated trains. So it's it's very, very complex, lots of different things. But then when we finally, as I mentioned earlier on with this lamp review thing, once we've got proposals, we then cycle back and reevaluate. Okay, this is where we've ended up. Let's take a fresh look and see how that matches up with what people have asked for, and then that then starts guiding, where we've gone from the sea of infinity of possibilities to 10 or 11 proposals down to the two we're going to make.
Okay, yeah. That's a good answer. On the topic of, I think we're just talking general now. How did the Diesel Legends gameplay pack experiment, it was put in quotes, go? Do you consider it a success? Can we expect similar packs in the future? Now, before you answer this received a large amount of backlash on the forums and from the community when we first announced it.
Yep.
How did it go?
Very well, actually. There's been lessons to learn there because of I think down to how the product was positioned, how we presented it to people, and how they would then understand what the product was. But I think for the vast majority of people that actually bought the product, and there was a lot, more than enough, very happy with that side of things. They've had a great time with it. It's revitalized one of the earliest, a second route, in fact, for Train Sim World. It revitalized it and meant that they could enjoy it again, for a second time around.
Yep.
So it does have some, obviously it's not modified the route. There was no changes to overhead wires and things like that. But I think that if what you wanted was to drive BR Blue locos on the Paddington Reading line, that's what it did. Not just mimicking the current services, but with the operations that you get from that style of line. So no, I think it's been a big success with some things to learn, basically.
Yes, because I think it was very hard to understand what we were actually offering at the time.
Yeah, I think at one point it was referred to as a route pack.
Yes.
So it got very confusing, and I think that there was maybe even a lack of clarity internally what the pack was, which obviously means you're off to a bad start before you even begin. So it's so
is it the kind of thing we would consider doing again? But obviously we would not make the same mistakes we made with Diesel Legends.
Oh, potentially. It's certainly enough of a success that if the opportunity, or the if the opportunity comes up for it in the future, then there's nothing that says we shouldn't do it. It seemed to go down quite well.
Now Sam has just given me a lovely list of the feature requests from the survey earlier this year. I will read them out in a second. Sam, are they listed in the, like, which one was the most popular 1 to 16 you've given me? It is worth mentioning before I read out the list that the multiplayer, it was not included this time, and that is because apparently multiplayer has come top 3 times out of the last 3 surveys, and to quote Sam, we already know it's number 1.
Yes, multiplayer is default number 1.
Okay, so I'm going to go from least popular to the most popular based off of the list. So in 16th place is VR support was requested. The 15th, cross-platform cloud save games. 14th, improved mastery rewards. 13th, level up rewards. 12th, livery sharing. 11th, scenario sharing. 10th, improved passenger variety, so different passenger characters and clothing. 9th, steam power. 8th, improved passenger quality, so the number of passengers. Quantity. 7th, build my own rail route. 6th, career mode. Really? Career mode is that high? That's interesting. 5th, improved passenger behavior, so what they do. So I'm assuming that's like playing on their phones and stuff, or yeah. 4th would be improved graphics and lighting. 3rd, improved sound. I'm surprised sound isn't like the top one, because it obviously gets talked about a lot. 2nd, additional playable roads, so guard, conductor, dispatcher, passenger station staff. And the top one is random events, weather in timetable mode. That's
Very good.
That's very good. Yeah. And while we're on the topic of other things that are popular, I actually have a couple of pictures of what the most popular played route was from this year, and what the most popular is overall. Would you like to see them?
Well, before we put them up, shall we ask the viewers to spam the chat with what not what their favourite route is, but what they think the favourite route is. So if you want to outline the two, what's the first category?
Right, so the first category is which, I can't remember which order I've put the pictures in now. Right, so you've got...
Well, this isn't going to work.
It is, it's going to be fine. You've got top 10 of the routes that were released this year. Which ones were the most popular? So... Dresden, Southeastern High Speed, London Commuter, Southeastern High Speed. That were released this year, Sam. Brighton, London Commuter, Southeastern. Okay. Dresden, London, Brighton. I mean, we've got a lot of Dresden going on there. A lot of London Commuter.
Yeah.
A lot of Southeastern. And then hold on. Unfortunately, right, there you go. Sam's put Dresden, Brighton, NEC. I'm going to end up spoiling the other one here. I just know it. You ready?
Go on then.
I think it's the wrong one. I'm almost certain of it. Damn it! It's the wrong one. Right, there you go. So, the top 10 most played routes in 2021. Southeastern High Speed, Dresden, London Commuter, Boston Sprinter, Hamburg Lübeck. And what was it? Sam, you did not tell me so. You got it wrong. Southeastern was the top. So yes, well done to everybody that got that right. What did you say, Matt? Did you even guess? You already knew the answer.
Shut up.
You already knew the answer, didn't you? I've just realised I muted you as well when I went onto this page.
Nice.
Yeah, really smooth. And then I would let everybody guess for the next one, but I kind of spoiled it when I showed it. So the other one is the top 10 most played routes of 2021. So you've got obviously the 3 core routes, Connacht, Sandpatch and Bakerloo, and then followed by Southeastern. So I thought that was quite interesting anyway to see what the most popular were. Yeah. And back to us. So I think we've covered an awful lot, Matt. Is there more you would still like to talk about? I think we've covered the gist of most of the questions, if not directly. We covered them while we were discussing.
At the moment. So there was a question raised on the forum about track IR issue when facing west on foot. Can you DM me with details so that I can get someone to look at that? I wasn't aware of that. In fact, we've tried to repro that today and we can't.
Will we see more underground lines in future Trains in World 2 routes?
I refer to the roadmap and bingo answer. And there's no reason not to. Let's say that. They've proven popular, but it's not something we're looking at. And when we are, you'll see it on a roadmap near you.
Give us a tease, please. I'm sorry, I have nothing exciting to share.
What are the main takeaways from 2021? Chinese primarily, with a bit of pizza.
I was going to say pizza's one. Let's see. We had some people asking us if we were still working from the office. At the moment, we're not. We're still working from home because of the COVID restrictions.
Yeah, the office opened and there was a bunch in, because I was in the office for a while. Then my wife went down with COVID. Daughter went down with COVID. Then I went down.
You went down with COVID.
So, and I think that it wouldn't surprise me if they're going to. I mean, the work from home regulations are back in now anyway. So, most people are working from home, but I'll be back in the office when it is sensible and appropriate to do so, as will a bunch of other people. But no, for the time being, we're at home.
But yeah, so I reckon we're probably done. We've tried to cover as much as we possibly can. Obviously, the stream has been going for 3 hours now. If we didn't get your question, I am really sorry about that. But yeah, it's not intentional. If we haven't answered it, we covered quite a lot, I'd say. You'll be joining everybody tomorrow, won't you, Matt?
Yeah.
What are you driving tomorrow?
No idea.
Oh, is there an echo? No, there's going to be an echo. Hold on. There you go. Yeah, you have no idea what you're driving.
I've got no idea what I'm driving tomorrow, so I might ping a post on the forums and say, what do you want to play?
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a let's play, so it's just going to be a sit back and play the game.
Yep, excellent. And then that will be the last stream of the year, and then we'll be back in the new year. So thank you to
actually, Stu Joy mentions a thing actually on the PS5 limits.
Go for it.
Down on the let me go down to this other section down here. So on the this thing is big. Where is it? There we go. So the PS5 64 gig limit, progress is being made on that, still being worked on. Again, we're going to check in the team on where that's got to. I think it's got to a pretty good place, and was getting ready to go into QA, but I've not seen anything yet. So I think that one's probably not too far off now for the 64 gig limit. And just to remind everybody, this is where it will auto mount and unmount things.
Yeah. There's still a description of it pinned to the PlayStation forums.
Yeah.
So
Pixelated liveries on PlayStation. I must admit, I thought that was fixed. I have a PS4 here. I'm going to try that later on.
The pixelation was fixed. There's an issue where some of them are quite literally vanishing.
Okay.
As in, you'll see the trains, and then there'll be a coach that's just missing.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well.
All right. So we'll try to dig into that and find out what's going on. That one. Any update on lack of trophies? No, but discussions have gone back and forth. At the moment, Sony are still in a little bit of disbelief that we want so many trophies. So we're still back and forth on the options on that one, I'm afraid. Save game transfer from PS4 to PS5 is still on the list of things we want to do, but there's been no progress made on it. The priority for that one has been on the 64 gig limit, I think. So again, I'm going to find out where that one is when I go back, and then we can update accordingly. And Xbox sound, Jason, we mentioned that earlier on. No update on that one. That's probably going to be in the next major update. But we've got to do, because we'll need to rebuild everything. Yep. From scratch. Not remake it, but re-hit the build button, which is literally a week. I think it takes of the build systems churning through that to redo that. So it's not so much lots of work as it is, wow, it ties everything up. And then we're going to have to do lots and lots of testing, because the different sound system, which doesn't have the issue, is the files are bigger. So we need to work out whether or not the quality needs to drop down, or whether or not actually the bigger files are fine because they use different memory. I don't know. Consoles are strange beasts. And then something mentioned earlier on was about Peninsula Corridor and the sound vanishing. We know what that is, and we have a fix in progress for that one. It's another symptom of this blooming Xbox audio, where there's something wrong with one of the files, but it's not wrong in a wrong way, if you like. It's wrong it just doesn't like the order of the bytes in a certain case, and just says, well, that's it, and it crashes the whole audio system on the entire Xbox. And the proposed fix from Microsoft is regenerate the file with a couple of bytes different, and it'll be fine. So yes, we have a fix for that. We just need to get that out to everybody.
Excellent. All right, I have a good question for us to finish on. Richard, the train spotter's asked, question for both Matt and Nat, what's your most memorable moment from 2021?
You go first then.
No way, I can't think off the top of my head.
Neither can I.
Come on. I would say it's got to be when I went flying past the station on Southeastern High Speed, and the community got very, very angry when I reversed because I didn't restart.
Was that this year?
That was this year. Southeastern High Speed came out this year.
Of course, yeah. It seems like so long ago.
So if the community think I've had a more memorable moment, please let me know. Go on.
I don't know what's one of my favourite. I mean, from an infamy perspective, I guess, the coffee and the keyboard.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, that is a very good one.
That's one of those heart in your mouth moments, followed very closely by second coffee in the keyboard, which is at that point you're just thinking, oh, come on, really?
Yeah.
It's not even interesting at this point. Yes, actually, Blackpool Matt calls out. I really enjoyed the stream where you and I did the G6.
Oh, that was actually an excellent one. I must say that was a good stream. That's up there. That's up there as a good one. The spadding, the G6 at the end. Yeah, okay. Let's go for the G6 one. I'd say that's my most. That's only because it's recent. You guys have forgotten all the other mistakes I've made throughout the year.
I think suffice to say, there are so many good things that happen during the year. It's difficult to pick one. It is, it's been a fantastic year.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed this year, and I feel like I've learned so much since this year. So yeah, just thanks for joining us, and hope everybody has a really nice new year.
Stay safe over New Year so we can see you. Well, I'll be seeing you tomorrow. So all of you.
Yes, Matt will be seeing you tomorrow.
No, otherwise than that, stay safe so that we can enjoy trains more next year.
Yeah, exactly. I'll see everybody next year for more streams. So bye everyone.
Cheers everybody.